All right, I think we're live. Wow. How fun is that? Good evening, everybody. It is, what is it? January 26th. That makes sense. That sounds right. Yesterday was the 25th, so today being the 26th makes sense. Yes, I'm killing time because I forgot to pull up the live stream monitoring page on YouTube here. So whilst I do that, I'll welcome you all to the show. Thank you very much to the sponsors of the show. You can scan the QR code above me to use my affiliate code to buy anything you want from the Fanatics store. As well, thank you very much to Marcus Gustafson for sponsoring the show with his Blue Line Hockey IQ program, where you can use the coupon code Scouching to get 10% off. And you can also find my work also on McKean's Hockey, which has been a supporter of my work for a couple of years now, and they're a very welcome partner. So thank you to those people. For podcast listeners, the players, there's a long list of players that I took a look at this week because I had some extra time to fire off some games, and a few were pretty short. So we took a look at Brady Cleveland, USNTP defenseman. He moved up off my watch list. Gabe Perreault moved up quite a bit. Ethan Gauthier stayed off my list. Cohen Zemer moved down quite a bit. Alex Rykov stayed where he was. I did a game of Mikhail Gulyayev, who stayed where he was. I did a game of Caden Shahan, who stayed where he was at the tail end of my list. I did a game of Jakob Stancel, a Czech kid playing in Sweden, who is pretty good, and he moved up my list a bit. Noel Nord I did a game of. He stayed where he was. Theo Lindstein I did a game of his, and he stayed where he was. Same with Oscar Fisker Molgaard. I moved Caden Price down a ton. We can talk about that if you want. Oliver Bonk, I did a game of him. He's still not on my list. I did a game of Albert Wickman, a Swedish defenseman for Rögle, who moved up off the watch list onto the ranked list. William Whitelaw stayed where he was. Caleb Parker, a Victoria Royals defenseman. That was an adventure, but he's off the watch list, and I ranked him at the tail end of my board. Dmitry Simishev moved down a bit. David Reinbacher stayed where he was. Axel Sandin Palika went down a spot. I did another game of Alexander Matveyev, the only game he's played since October. He stayed where he was, and I did a game of Aaron Menidian, and he moved up a few spots. So that outlines the guys I did this week. I've got a very long list of players to go through that I've had a lot. It's been a while since I watched them, so I hope next week's list is also quite long. Anyway, let's get into the questions right off the bat because we're wasting no time. There's no real housekeeping on my end to throw out there. I did have a Substack post on my Substack at scouching.substack.com about draft eligibles of the World Juniors that you can check out as well. I thought that turned out pretty well, and the feedback has been pretty positive to this point. Okay, first question of the night. What do you think of Gleb Trikozov 1 year later? I actually watched him twice this week by proxy, just from seeing some. I watched a game of Timur Mukhanov, and I tracked a game of Mikhail Gulyayev. Trikozov's coming along. I think that Omsk's second division team they've recently struggled a lot to score. I think they got shut out in 4 or 5 straight games. But Gleb Trikozov is still Gleb Trikozov. He's always been a player that was going to be a long-term project. He's very, very young, but I think he's been performing pretty well whenever I've seen him in the VHL. Did I have him ranked a little high? I think it's a little too early to tell that. But every game I've seen him in, he's played pretty well. He's still Gleb Trikozov. Fast, skilled, confident, really, really excellent shooter. And again, this is about the long game, and I feel like in a few years he's going to be a heck of a player. Which players stood out for you in last night's CHL Top Prospects game? Were there any players who showed better than you would have expected? So I'll be perfectly honest. I watched about 52-ish minutes of it. And I will be rewatching it at some point once it's put up on Instat, which it is not the last time I checked earlier today. So granted, I haven't ironclad my takes from that game, and I always prefer when I'm watching a game like that to watch it twice. I've watched the BioSteel game, most of it twice now, just to sort of get a good read on some of the guys, especially the ones I'm more interested in. So I'll do the same thing with the Top Prospects game. But right off the top of my head, I thought Grayson Sachin was spectacular. I might need to put the jersey numbers in front of me here. Let me see. Here we go. Let's go to Habs Eye on the prize. Oh my goodness, what is this? All right, I won't subject you to that. I thought Denver Barkey played well. I mean, obviously Connor Bedard and Zach Benson were awesome. I thought Nick Lardis had a few good moments. Grayson Sachin was spectacular. I thought Kerry Terrance, as they were calling him on the broadcast, he played pretty well. I thought Bo Akey had some good moments. Luca Cagnoni was really good, I thought. Who else? Carson Bjarnason made a couple of nice saves in that game. Who else? Ethan Miedema crushed someone. I don't remember who it was, but he absolutely flattened a guy. That's always fun. I thought Callum Ritchie played well. I thought Luca Pinelli played really well. Carson Raykopf, I thought, had a few good moments as well, including the goal that he scored. Who else? Tanner Molendijk was also good. There was a few. I thought Hunter Brustevitz played well enough to sort of show a different side of his game. I still am really unsure if he's ever going to be an NHL player, but I thought he played pretty well. So yeah, there were a few good performances, but I'll know more when I go back and rewatch the game since it happened last night and I haven't had the chance to watch it again. Thoughts on Bob McKenzie's midterm rankings? Oh yeah, let's do that. I mean, again, like at this point in the season, there's a lot of stuff that, I just disagree with. And that's why are they posting? Okay, there we go. And that's just going to be how it is. Like, I am very confident in my read on Colby Barlow right now. I'm very confident on I'm more confident on Michkov being outside the top 5 for sure. There's a few that I'm really sure about. And I mean, but in general, like, the thing about this year's draft class is I'd say anywhere after 5, it opens up like a lot. And there's a lot of players that all have weird mixes of stuff that's really, really impressive. It all depends on what you value in the draft, right? Like, where you kind of lose me with draft rankings and such is when you look at a list of players and I can't really tell what you're looking for. It just seems like it's kind of arbitrarily thrown together, and I feel like lists that involve multiple people's input can kind of turn out that way. So with me, I mean, you're looking at my own personal list. It's just one person, and I bet if you looked at individual scouts, individual lists with NHL teams, they would look ridiculous too. So it's just an interesting caveat to think about. Again, I've tried a lot of the guys that I have ranked lower than a lot of people have. I have gone and tried, like, you want to talk imposter syndrome? Like, I am desperate to tell myself that I'm wrong on these players, but it's to the point where the players that I have lower, guys like Barlow, Dvorsky, Yager, even Michkov to a certain extent, Callum Ritchie, it's every time I've seen them. Ethan Gauthier is another one. It would be me just putting a player higher on my list just because other people have them there, and I can't do that. That's just not cool. I think with Mackenzie's list, a lot of it makes sense, though. I mean, I'm not surprised it's Bedard, Fantilli, Carlson. That's what I have. Benson in the top 5. I'm not surprised. That's what I have. Crystal at 18 is fascinating. I get it. I was talking to an NHL scout earlier this week about Crystal, and the comment was, I actually spoke to him to a couple of people about him, and the thoughts were basically like, well, you can understand why teams would be scared of a 5'8", 5'9" playmaking winger that doesn't really have blazing speed and doesn't really have the defensive work rate that you kind of need, and kind of really needs someone to get them the puck and has a hard time getting the puck into the offensive zone consistently and blah, 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 which I agree with. My read on him is I'm a lot more optimistic for the sort of developments that could come. But the thought was posited to me of like, well, there could be a difference between, just a matter of practice and a matter of like fixing mechanics and how tough one might be relative to the other. And it's going to be interesting to see with what happens with Crystal. But to me, it kind of makes sense that NHL people whose job it is to go up there on the stage and not screw up their first round pick. It would make sense for them to be maybe a little bit more hesitant about Andrew Crystal relative to what the public sphere has out there on him. But I think at the end of the day, I think you're going to end up with an excellent offensive playmaking winger, and the development plan is pretty clear to me. But I can understand why he might be ranked low, and I saw some people gnashing their teeth about how low he was on his list. Having Oliver Moore behind Ryan Leonard, I might swap those guys around. What else is going on here? Charlie Stramel and Samuel Hanzik in the first round. Like, I get it. I think in a few years, those guys could come along quite a ways. I really don't see it with Dragicevic and Haltonen that high. Oliver Bonk, I did another game of him. I would not touch him in the first round at all. Same thing with Cohen Zemer. But again, like, things open up so fast in this draft. I mean, Gavin Brindley at 43, I think, is a little nutty. What else do we have here? Andrew Gibson at 51 in front of guys like Bo Akey and Andrew Strathman and Quentin Burns even, and Tanner Molendijk. Even Aaron Minetian, like, that seems a little crazy to me. I've seen Gibson a few times this year, and I just haven't really seen it with him. I mean, I think there are players in the NHL that play like Andrew Gibson, but I think they were a lot better in junior. But I don't know. Andrew Gibson is scoring points, so maybe I'm missing something. Will Whitelaw at 65, I get it. I totally understand. Luca Pinelli at 71, I think that's a really low rate, but I can see why people would have him low. Will Whitelaw at 65, though, like, I get it. Some people just do not like that guy, and I can understand why. And again, you don't want to go up on stage in the first round and whiff on your first round pick on a guy like Will Whitelaw, where he has a lot of lessons to learn. But I feel like someone like Carolina is going to draft William Whitelaw in the 4th round, and he's going to be a second or third line offensive guy, and everyone's going to wonder how they found him and whatever, or how they developed him into what he is, when in reality the talent was always there. It was just a matter of adapting to higher levels of play and figuring out how to drive better results. But, you know, you take your time with him, I think you'll be fine. What else on Bob's list here? I mean, I don't know. Once you get past a certain point, it's whatever. I have Mishiak in my first round, personally. I love him. I think that, like, if you want to have a guy like Charlie Stramel in the first round, there's an argument for Martin Mishiak to be right there with him, in my opinion. Those two guys have, I'd say, some similarities. But with Mishiak, I think his skill level is way higher, and I think that he just doesn't show it very often. So I would probably coach him to do that more. But in any case, yeah. The rest, I mean, yeah, it is what it is. There's always going to be players that are drafted way higher than where I would have taken them. And that just means good news for teams that are smart and trade down. Like in this draft, if you don't have a top 5 pick, maybe a top 10 pick, you trade down. You just trade down. It's the same story every year. Just this year, to me, it starts at 5. Last year, it started at like 7 or 8. This year, to me, it's like the top 5 is in a class of its own. The rest, it's like you could go any number of different ways. If David Reinbacher goes 6th overall, I wouldn't do it, but I wouldn't be surprised to see it happen based on what I've seen of Reinbacher in the last little while. Why and how is Sam Maltonbo ruining the tank? Is it sustainable? Is it a mirage or luck? So it's funny. With goaltenders, you can look at their track record and say, yeah, this is probably not going to sustain itself. Probably. But yeah, I don't know. How he's a goaltender, and sometimes pucks hit goaltenders, right? Why? Because nobody can have nice things, right? That's how it works. Welcome to life. It's unfair. Is it a mirage and luck? I honestly don't know. I'm not a mystic soothsayer, so I can't tell you the laws of luck and how it works. It's a crazy thing. He's on a bit of a heater, and we'll see how it goes. I don't know. I personally don't trust it, but stranger things have happened with Sam Maltembo. Have you changed your mind on Arbor Xhekaj? No, I have not. Actually, I saw that question asked before I signed on for the stream and looked up some of his analytical charts and everything, and yeah, he's been on a bad team, not great. But he's hitting a lot of guys, and I get it. He's a fan favorite, and he gets a lot of penalty minutes. Like, that's cool. Again, this is just my philosophy. Not my kind of player, you know? Not my kind of guy. Maybe a depth guy, but, like, not my kind of guy to, like, be thrown out there for interview after interview and, like, whatever. But a fun player to watch, nonetheless. Last week, I asked about Linus Lindgren and Tanner Ludke. Have you had a chance to check them out? And if so, any thoughts? So not Linus Lindgren, so I'm sorry about that. I'll be honest about that. But Tanner Ludke, I watched a little bit of. You know, Tanner Ludke kind of reminds me of how I feel about a guy like Andrew Gibson. I haven't seen a tremendous amount of Ludke, but I watched, I think, a game or two, and then a bunch of, like, individual parts of his game that I value in a player. I think I have him in here. Oh, I don't actually have him in here. That's strange. I should probably put him in the list. Let's just pretend Tanner Ludke is in here because Ludtke. There we go. I'll add him to the list for sure at some point. But anyway, to me, it's like he's a fine USHL player. You know, he seems like he's a step ahead in terms of smarts and resilience on his feet. Not the most skilled guy, not the flashiest guy, but just makes good plays, and that's fine. But when it gets to players like Ludtke, I always ask myself, like, one, where am I drafting this player? And two, is it likely that there's going to be players that I like more than him available at pick X? And to me, the answer with guys like Ludtke is almost always yes. Like, he's a fine option, and I feel like he'll get drafted just by how he plays. It's very safe and simple, but effective, which is a good thing. But we'll see how it goes. But Linus Lindgren, I will check out. I think I still have his player page pulled up from last week. I've had a very busy week, and I've been really focusing on tracking data, but I will get to Linus Lindgren for sure. Drake DeBono. Hello, Drake. I'm doing pretty well. Has Jiricek's play this season changed your thoughts on him? Where does he rank for this draft class? I don't know what you mean by change my thoughts on him. I think he was in my top 5 last year. I do think that he's gotten stronger, both in terms of his skating and how that helps him physically. And that was kind of the prognosis for him, right? Like, my thing with him was there's a lot of upside, but it really matters in terms of how far he comes as a player, like with his strength and his ability to play the way he wants to play and have it work. You know, like, again, when Columbus picked him, I don't think I was down on Jiricek whatsoever. It's a good pick. I just felt like, I mean, the data on him last year was really, really bad. And again, if I was just the data guy, he would have been ranked a lot lower on my board than he was. But I looked at him and went, well, yeah, but you can see the wheels are sort of turning in the right direction. You can see some really high-end offensive skill out of him and all this stuff. He was just losing a lot more physical battles than he should have. And I think that, you know, building a lot more muscle and getting stronger, especially with his lower body, he can close play out. He can both close play out along the boards a lot easier. And Jiricek can also drive play up the ice a lot stronger, and he's got that shot, and there's a lot more going on, which is great. So yeah, he's come along well. I mean, again, it's way too early to say where he ranks amongst his draft class. It's just, it hasn't even been a calendar year yet. It's, you know, we need to be more patient than this before we look at a draft class and go, yeah, but did this guy get drafted too early or late? What was your favorite subject in school growing up? Ooh, good question. I liked hard math classes. So, like, if anyone here is Ontario curriculum from the 2000s, I took advanced functions and relations in grade 11. One of my favorite classes I ever took. I loved it, and I loved the teacher. It was so funny in that class. So it's basically a class where you learn about how graphs work and like how functions work and how what different parts of a function, how they work, and like how to solve for various variables in a function and all that stuff. Really cool stuff. But on the syllabus, it said you had to have a graphing calculator. And day one, my teacher's like, if I ever see you guys bringing a graphing calculator in this classroom, I will remove it and put it in my desk, and you get it back at the end of the semester. And I'm going, well, okay. Because he wanted you to sort of visualize these things and like learn how to see the answer you're trying to get at rather than using a graphing calculator and like doing the math there. You know, it was a lot of stuff by hand, which I really respected, and I latched onto that. So I loved that. Grade 12, I took calculus and vectors, which is the more advanced math class, and I nailed the calculus section, but I sucked at the vectors part. Any visualization of space, like I think I had issues with that growing up. And I still have issues with visualizing shapes and geometry and placing objects and things. And like the study of vectors was always really complicated to me. Did not do very well, but I made up for it with my calculus section in that class and pulled an A out of my hat at the end of the semester there. So those two classes were great. I had a fun time in chemistry as well, but some of the best courses I did take, though, were in university for sure. At McMaster Kinesiology, really, really cool program with some really, really cool classes. And it wasn't just gym class, because people say that about kinesiology. McMaster Kinesiology is certainly not gym class; it's anything but. So some good ones in there too. And does you had a second part of your question? Does Tuomola lighting up the Mestis do anything to put off the seemingly imminent bust status? No. He should be a player who can rip the second division in Finland to shreds. He just should. But at the same time, like Robbie Järventie was ripping that league to shreds when he was barely 17 years old. Like that league is not great. I think Finnish hockey in general is a little bit maybe not overrated, but it's not quite the same competitive level as like a lot like places like Sweden. Even I think the Swiss Pro League is a better place to look than Finland. But yeah, I don't know. I think with Tuomola, he's a player that was really, really flawed when he was draft eligible, and the Flyers were a weird fit to me. And he was always going to be sort of a long-term bet to sort of learn the right lessons about, he has all the speed and skill in the world, but he was never doing anything with it. Very sort of, like William Whitelaw-like in a way, which, might bode for some sort of, future for William Whitelaw, but at least he's going to be in college hockey and he's going to be a lot more physically pressured. And we'll see how that goes for him. And I feel like the speed and skill level with Whitelaw is a little bit higher. But with Tuomola, he was a frustrating player. And I don't know. It is what it is, and it's never over. But I think he's got a ways to go still. How about that Grayson Sachin performance at the top prospects game? Yeah, I think he was the best player in that game that wasn't named Bedard and maybe Benson. But he wasn't far back. He was great. At this point, where do you feel are the talent tiers in the first round? Yeah, so again, like, I think this draft does open up after, like, 5th overall. But for me, I mean, I've got Connor Bedard alone, then Adam Fantilli alone, and then Carlson and optimistically Crystal in a tier on their own. Maybe Benson. Benson's really riding the line there. And then I'd say for me, like Moore, Brindley, Simishev, Michkov, Sandin Pellikka, Smith, Gulyayev, Perron, and Leonard. And maybe Mukhanov, but I don't know. I think that's a little much. All of those guys I feel like are in a group together. And then it's just like open season, right? Riley Heidt, Edward Chalet, Luca Cagnoni, Otto Stenberg, Quinton Musty, William Whitelaw, Alex Ciernik, Luca Pinelli, Martin Mishak, Molendyke, Fisker Molgard, Reinbacher. Like, there's a bunch of guys that do a lot of different things well that could fill out your lineup that is from the middle of my first round all the way to the middle of my second round. I really, like, if you really twisted my arm and I had to pick between, like, Tanner Molendyke and Luca Pinelli, I think I might go with Pinelli, but if I had 6 guys and girls at a table and 4 of them wanted Molendyke and I was one of the 2 that wanted Pinelli and I was the director of the department, I'd be like, you know what? Screw it. Let's take Molendyke. We might even be able to get Pinelli later in the draft. It's like if Pinelli's there at the next pick, we're taking him there, but we'll go with Molendyke here and go from there. Because I get it. I can understand why you would want to make that choice, even if it's maybe not the choice that I personally would make. But also those guys are really close. And then I mean, from the mid-second onward, again, it just opens up again. There's just a lot of guys who I think show good individual areas with either really big flaws that need work, or just maybe just limited upside, or just they're a long shot in general. But I like this draft class. Like, it's a good group of players that I think should have a variety of different NHL kind of careers, serving a number of different roles, but a lot of players where certain things will need to come in the future, and if they don't, then they could really struggle to get to higher levels. But yeah, that's kind of where I feel like the top is pretty bunched up, I would say, and then it opens up a lot. I've been very whelmed with Mishar's game in Kingston as of late. Anything you notice that changed with him? I'm going to be honest, I have not seen that much of Mishar at all. I thought he played really well at the World Junior. That's a plus. But I don't know. Again, it's the guy's D+1 year. Like, you've got a long runway with a guy like Mishar. He can go back to Europe for another 2 years if he wants to, and play pro hockey next year if he wants to, or go to the AHL and look at what's happening with Timothy Liljegren, right? The Toronto Maple Leafs pulled Liljegren all the way over to play with the Marlies when he was 18 years old, and people were like running the clock on him 2 years ago when he was 22 or 21, and now he's arguably one of the best all-around defensemen on the Toronto Maple Leafs. And so it's like, be patient, right? Like, these guys that have the talent, which Mishar, in my opinion, does. He's got the talent. Just don't be too hard. Like, be patient. Let them make mistakes. Let them push pace. Let them play their style and get better every year. That's the goal, right? Like, it's not about constantly evaluating them as soon as they're drafted within a year and, like, constantly being on edge of, like, well, he's not doing this, therefore maybe this is happening. It's like, it's a process. This stuff takes time, and I like Mishar. I still really, really like him. I haven't seen a ton of him this year, but I have faith that you give a long-term plan, I think you'll be fine. What are your thoughts on Parsonen? Did you ever track him? I did not. Seems like someone who went under the radar and is now hitting the ground running. Yeah, I honestly did not see anything of Juuso Parsonen. I think that's his name, Juuso Parsonen. I've seen a bit of him I think he's the guy with the Predators, right? I've seen a bit of him because I was curious about him. I mean, he was always a really good up and down winger that could shoot the puck really well, from what I can recall. I went back and watched some of his draft year tape, and that was kind of what I saw out of him. And it just goes to show, like, sometimes if you go off the board to draft guys that can move up and down the ice in a good line with a lot of speed and have some good finishing ability, it might be worth keeping around. But yeah, not bad. Have you watched Merkley at all since he's entered the AHL? No, I have not. The AHL is probably the league that I watch the least. I spend way more time watching draft eligibles, and this isn't my full-time gig, so I just don't. The AHL is just not a priority for me, really, unless I'm spot checking players that are underperforming or outperforming for whatever reason, which is actually something that I should probably do on my own time in the near future. Question from a YouTube member. Thank you very much for your support, Whitney's Mill Tank. Oh, Whitney's Mill Tank can go to hell. That thing, I swear, Whitney's Mill Tank, when I was 11 or 12, made me cry in the car on the way to my family's place out in the woods. Made me cry. Swear to God. I was so mad. Roll out, and that stupid cow can take a hike. I'm so triggered. My libtard brain is so triggered. Okay. Excuse me. Anyway, the question is thoughts on Hockey Prospects Top 32. Let's take a look at it, because I don't remember it off the top of my head. Connor Bedard's at 1. Who would have thought? Fantilli at 4, I think, is a take, but whatever. I mean, I love Simashev at 7. I'm really happy about that. Daniil Boot at 9 and Honzek at 8 is just, I absolutely love it. Like, I could see a world 5 years down the road where, especially Daniil Boot, I could see a world where he is one of the 10 best players to come out of the draft. It's possible, but he's got a long way to go. He is so much fun in the craziest ways that you can imagine. He's skilled, huge, and like pretty lanky, really, really good shooter. Awful forward skater right now, just does not generate much speed unless he's crossing over, wheeling up, hooking back against the defensive blue line as a breakout target. He can fly if he does that. Uses his body weight really well, protects the puck really well. But oh my God, he is flawed. Sam Honzek. I like Honzek right around where I have Boot, and it's very similar. I think Honzek is maybe a bit more skilled and kind of slows the game down a little bit more than Boot does, and sort of, I think, might have a little bit more NHL projectability in that way. But I again feel like there's a ways to go. Alex Rykov at 10 is wild. I don't get that. And I saw this and I was like, okay, I got to do another game of Rykov and see what's going on there. I get it. He's very smart. He's a very smart guy who knows how to chip in really well. He's got some skill. He can shoot. He can make little slip passes on the rush. Like, he's got some talent, but top 10 is a little nutty. Like, above guys like Crystal and Leonard and Moore and blah. There's a lot. Dvorsky at 11, fine, whatever. Again, it's the same guys where I'm not always a huge fan of them. I mean, Reinbacher at 19, that's kind of where I think he should be kind of going-ish. I just have him a little lower because there's just other guys that I like more. But if you want like a second pair, all situations defender that can shoot, who's going to eat minutes, and if he bulks up a little more, then yeah, he's going to be a good player. Another list with Adam Gajan in the first round. I mean, I think it's happened before where goaltenders have been drafted just basically strictly off of their World Junior performance. I think Kristers Gudlevskis might have been one of those. There was another one, not Dennis Godla. I think it was another Slovakian goaltender who had a hell of a tournament. But I mean, look, I've seen Gajan after the World Juniors. I went back and watched some Chippewa Steel games because there was another player on that team that I was watching. And he's a very good goaltender, but I don't know about drafting a re-entry goaltender in the first round. Again, like, you're walking up on stage and on this list, you're going to have a name like Jaden Perron available, and passing on that to go for a goaltender is a risk, but I will not say that Gajan was not bad. I will not say that he was bad. He's been good, but boy, that's a surprise. Sandin Palika at 20. I disagree with it, but I understand why, especially after watching him again this week. Again, Oliver Bonk in the first round to me is bonkers. I don't get it. He had some decent moments last night, but man, the game I watched today of him, just to make sure, like, I saw him last night, I was like, okay, he's playing okay, but I still don't think he's a first round pick. And then I watched a game of his today, which is from the last little while, and it was not good. Like, he is a guy that an NHL coach will play and play and play. I mean, I hope, I don't want him to like fail, but he was tough to watch today at times, and really, just not as effective as a first round pick defenseman probably should be. But I don't know, he's got points, so that factors in. But yeah, I mean, it's fine. I mean, I can kind of see where they're coming from with a lot of this, but I don't know. I just disagree. I think they're just very optimistic about development in big players that have a long way to go. But I can understand why you would give them a little bit more leeway to improve when they're probably growing up, growing up into their gigantic bodies. Who's your personal favorite prospect in this draft outside the top three? Personal favorite, probably Gavin Brindley or Oliver Moore. I mean, Dmitry Simishev is going to be fascinating for me because he is the type of gigantic defenseman that I would value a ton. Like, he's not just lumbering around hitting guys and cross-checking guys and all that. He's a big guy who knows how to use his reach, has really good flashes of really good skating and flashes of really, really good skill. And I think there's a lot of offensive upside you could work with him. I think there's a lot of sort of like once he has some more experience and again builds out things a little bit more in terms of his frame because he's a big boy, I think he could be a heck of a player. I mean, I wouldn't like make him a 240-pound gargantuan animal of a human being. I think I would keep him pretty lean because of how he skates and the skill level he's got. That would be my focus. And I think he could be tremendous, but he's a work in progress. I think, though, my favorite players to watch are probably Oliver Moore and Gavin Brindley. And I'd say if I had to pick one, I'd go Brindley. But Timur Mukanov is not far behind. I know I'm saying too many names. You just asked for one. But I adore watching Timur Mukanov play hockey, especially the fact that he's playing against men in the Russian second division. I love him. Who would you say is going to be the best draftable player from the Quebec League, and where did they go? I mean, the only Quebec guy I have ranked is Etienne Morin. I think he could go in the second round. I wouldn't do it, but I think he could. I mean, what's his name is going to get drafted really high. Ethan Gauthier, I haven't seen a single other person really with him outside the first round. And with Gauthier, I did another game of him recently, and I just don't see it. I don't. I don't know. I don't know what I'm missing. I don't know. With Gauthier, I just don't see it. The guy, I mean, I like Etienne Morin because he's skilled, and you can bet on that. Like, he's big and has really good reach, and his hands are really good. He puts pucks on net and gets a lot of offense through that. But last night, I thought he was kind of meh. because he's just not a great skater and not particularly deceptive with his skill or anything. He just has good hands and can spin off pressure well, and there's stuff that I like about him. I actually have him queued up for next week, so I'll have a better idea of what he is next week, but it's tough. Thoughts on Andrei Loshko? The Quebec League is weak, but he seems to be the main driver for Chicoutimi. Yeah, he's one I haven't seen at all, so I have to check him out. I've been meaning to for a long time. I just keep bouncing around other areas of the world and other areas of my draft list. What else do we have here? Who's your favorite drafted player currently not in the NHL? Probably Marat Kuznetsov. I think he's awesome, and I think he's just gotten better and better every year, and he's going to continue to get better. I think he's awesome. I've been watching him off and on over the course of this year in the KHL with SKA St. Petersburg, and he rocks. What do you think Matthew Wood projects into in the NHL? Like a middle six winger that you can put on the power play, I guess. Something like that. I see a lot of people calling him Tage Thompson, but you got to be so careful chasing an outlier. Like there only has been one Tage Thompson. And with Matt Wood, I mean, I'm not saying it's impossible, but I remember watching Tage Thompson when he was draft eligible, and the skill level was there, and the shot was there. With Matt Wood, like, he does things decently well, but I feel like he's probably going to end up a third or second line winger that can chip in offensively, and you can put him on your power play as an offensive threat. David, hello. Can't figure out what to make of Anton Wahlberg. Good player. Anton Wahlberg is a curious one. He's a guy who I have ranked I have him in the late second round, early third. And the way I see Wahlberg is like, you're going to need to be patient. He's a guy who I think for his size skates very well. He's very fluid. He gets around the ice pretty well. He has flashes of really exceptional skill that I don't really expect from a big guy. He kind of reminds me a little bit of how I saw William Strumgren when he was this age, like very skilled and just didn't really know how to use it or lacked the sort of confidence to use it as much as he could. Wahlberg had at the World Junior A's this year like a spectacular goal, just flying up the wing and cutting inside with skill and using his body to protect the puck, and that was great. And that's the kind of stuff that I want to see more of. But it seems like a lot of the time he's just kind of floating around and sort of trying to stay ahead of the play. And when he would get the puck, he's not particularly quick getting his feet going and getting speed generated and everything. But when he has some open ice and some time to get moving, then yeah, he's a really interesting player. If he's there in the later rounds somehow, then maybe I would take a swing on him and leave him in Sweden for a few years. But yeah, I don't know. Not totally sold on him, but I'm optimistic because I think that he could be something really, really interesting. What short king should Montreal draft this year from Martin St. Louis to give his massive quads to? Gavin Brindley. Gavin Brindley in Montreal would be so much fun, and I think that Habs fans would love him. Stay hydrated. Oh, yes, true. Thank you, Joe. Luckily, I have my Halton region water filtered through my fridge. Almost went down the wrong pipe. That would have been embarrassing. Okay. Thoughts on Luke Mittelstadt, Matt Caponi, and Ty Mueller? Some productive D+2 NCAA players. Yeah, I mean, Luke Mittelstadt is a guy who always has been a guy that really I have struggled with. I put him on my list for a while last year just because he is a lot of fun to watch. Very skilled, almost acts like a forward, a really interesting offensive defenseman. But boy, I mean, I watched him a bit at the World Junior, and I just was not really... I think a lot of his weaknesses defensively were exposed. Just puck watching, not really surveying and scanning the ice particularly well. Not the most laterally mobile guy in terms of covering gaps and closing gaps. Again, like, where am I... Again, it's the cardinal question at draft time. Where am I drafting Luke Mittelstadt? And is there going to be a guy that I like more? And the answer right now is pretty much yes, and there's a bunch. I don't know the other two guys, so I'll have to check them out. I don't know anything about these guys. Caponi and Mueller, but when I get the chance, I'll give him a look. What are the reasons you have Brayden Yager that low in your ranking? Because I don't think he's as good as people say he is. I like the shot. He's got some decent straight line speed. I've done a few games of his. I have another one lined up to go, which I will be doing soon. He's a guy who I think really, really needs a supporting cast. I don't see how he's a center in the NHL. To me, I see a guy who you play on your power play as a shooting threat, and at 5-on-5, he's out there sort of eating minutes and being a finisher on the wing. I've really struggled with Brayden Yager all year. His offensive transition data, he's not very active at all. And when he is, he turns the puck over 50% of the time. And he's doing that largely through carrying. Like, his skill level is clunky, and I think he gets exposed for that through turning the puck over on entries and exits out of the defensive end. He tries to drive wide on guys, but doesn't really have the speed to do that at the WHL level at 5-on-5. He's maybe more of a chip and chase guy, but even then, I think he kind of lacks that speed to do it. Again, defensively, there's just not a whole lot there from what I've seen. He's a medium range shooter, so he's not really getting to the really high danger areas to score. He's more following up on rebounds and getting shots off from sort of the face-off circle towards the midline of the ice. Like, to me, it's just a lot of really questionable projection with him. But especially because, again, we're like he's just outside the first round for me, but in a tier that stretches to the middle of the first round. If my scouting team were like, yeah, but he's not, we think he'll be a winger and will be a guy that, we just deploy in offensive situations and play on our power play, and we think he can score points, I'd be like, okay, sure. Like, if that's what you want in like a 20-something overall pick, then I'm happy with that. That's a good pick. And I think that that's the right way to go. But there's a lot of guys that I think bring more all-around value outside of finishing than Yager does. Let me just put his name up here. It's also like he doesn't really score that much at even strength. Like, his even strength involvement is 21%, and his regular involvement, which is all situations, is 31%. And his 40% primary points on even strength goals scored when he's on the ice is not great. Like, the problem for me is that he's talked about as a top 10 or even a top 5 guy, and I just think that's nuts. Like, he's a good player. He does some things really well, but there's a lot of good players in this year's draft, and I think they bring a lot more to the table than he does. I don't know. He's a good player. He's a good player. But I get the feeling that people are going to ask me, have you changed your mind about Brayden Yager? He's scoring in the WHL. Have you changed your mind? Have you changed your mind? And my answer probably will always be no, because there's probably going to be players that are elsewhere that are performing just as well that were picked 15, 20 picks later. And I don't know. I think he's fine, but I just don't see the top 10 player that a lot of people seem to see out of him. Thoughts on Jordan Tourigny? He's kind of a guy. I've never really seen it with him. He last night I think was a good explanation of sort of what Tourigny brings to the table. Once the puck's in the offensive zone, he can thread passes around and make plays on the offensive zone. But there's a lot more to hockey than just that, and I just haven't seen a ton of diverse characteristics in Tourigny's game that really push him over the edge for me. Like, he's an okay skater, but I don't think he's good enough to be a 5'9", 5'10" defender at the next level. He's an okay passer, but I don't think he's skilled enough or deceptive enough to sort of make it work at the next level. I feel like he could be one of the more productive QMJHL defenders in the next couple of years, but I don't know if I would draft him. Again, he's not a bad hockey player, but where am I drafting him, and are there going to be players that I like better available at pretty much any pick in a draft? Probably. Any chance for Benson as a center? Need hope as the Jackets derp their way out of a lottery pick as they always do. Yeah, I mean, I think it's possible. I think it's possible. I would try it. I would give it a shot. I wouldn't guarantee. Oh, weird. There's something. Okay. I got to fix my even strength point production, or my even strength involvement math. I think it's not factoring in players that have been traded, so I got to fix that. So I might need to take back a bit of what I said about Brayden Yager, but I do, for a fact, I am aware the IPP and primary IPP numbers are accurate, and I do know for a fact that he's not scoring a ton of even strength. But besides the point, we're talking about Zach Benson. I don't know. I would give him a shot at center. You're the Columbus Blue Jackets. You have nothing to lose, right? Like, oh no, we suck again. We're going to get Ivan Demidov or Macklin Celebrini this year. Darn, that's too bad. But Zach Benson, I mean, I would try him there, but I wouldn't be too worried if he ends up as a winger. He's going to be a very, very good one. Like, he's the kind of guy where you can put maybe a lower quality center on the line with him that maybe is more defensively responsible, and he'll make that player look a lot better. I think he's that type of player too. So I wouldn't be too sad if he ends up a winger, but I feel like it's possible to try him at the center position and see how it goes. You think the Avs unlock Merkley, and what made Perreault go up so many spots? So with Merkley, that's a pretty tidy bit of business for Colorado. If it doesn't work for him in Colorado, he's going to go to Switzerland or something, and that's where he's going to make a ton of money and score a ton of points. Like, Ryan Merkley, again, I haven't seen a ton of him over this season. I watched a bit of him with the Sharks last year, and I thought that I was sitting there going, yeah, this looks like Ryan Merkley, where it's a guy where he moves really well. He's got a lot of skill, but just still hasn't figured out how to use it. And defensively, there are moments where you're like, I really wish things went differently there. To the point where, yeah, it is problematic. Like, it's not like his analytics were particularly favorable at the NHL level. But I'm not saying it's impossible. I look at Colorado, I go, you know what? Colorado knew how to use Devon Taves. They turned Cale Makar into what he is. Do they have Brad Hunt? They had Brad Hunt. And teams that have Brad Hunt seem to like Brad Hunt for like a year, and then they get rid of him. But they've got a lot of guys that have a lot of offense on the back end. And if they are able to alleviate some of his responsibilities defensively, which being a team that chips in defensively as much as they do nowadays, because you have to, maybe it's a thing that could work. I don't know. I think that if it doesn't work in Colorado, I don't know where else it's going to work. I mean, I think he's going to be waiver eligible next year. So, pitter patter. We'll see what happens, but I'm optimistic. What made Perreault go up so many spots? I just had him too low. I think with Perreault, like, he kind of reminds me of what I thought about Sasha Pastujov a couple of years ago, who was also scoring a ton of points. But I watched him and I'm going, I don't see this guy as an NHL player. But with Perreault, I see a more intelligent player. Not to say Pastujov is not intelligent. Pastujov was a player who was very creative and skilled and combined those things almost to a frustrating degree and really relied on that. Whereas I see Perreault as much more of a, he's not as skilled, but he has enough skill to make that extra pass and make that smart play. He knows his limitations, I think. Like, you pass it to him on a defensive entry, or a defensive exit, he's not going to try to hero it across the blue line himself and just keep his feet moving. He'll move his feet a couple of times, generate some speed, draw some defense in, stop immediately, pull back like half a step, and fire a pass over to Will Smith, right? Or on an offensive rush, he'll be right there with Will Smith. Smith passes him the puck, he drags the goalie just a bit out of position, like towards the goal line, and then he'll thread that pass right back to Will Smith, and then he'll thread the pass back over to Ryan Leonard on the other side of the net or something for a tap-in, or Smith will shoot it himself. Like, he just he collaborates with very, very good players very well, I think. With me and guys like Perreault, I just don't value those players as high, right? Like, to me, he reminds me of how Josh Waugh looks now, but a couple of years ago. But at a draft eligible age, where it's like he's a good complementary guy. And would I want a good complementary guy in the first round of an NHL draft? I think that's a stretch, just because I'd rather take a chance on someone that can play with a guy like Perreault or play with other NHL players and make them better.
Whereas I think Perreault is going to be one of those guys where he needs another player to help make him look better, but he will also help that player in return. It's weird, but to me, I see it as also the other thing I see with Perreault is like with players that play like Perreault in the NHL, generally they start as a different player with a bit more speed and skill and that talent profile, and then sort of regress back and find their comfort zone as a complementary offensive piece in the NHL. And it's pretty rare to see a guy who struggles with pace and skating and generating speed and evading pressure continue to drive that results positively as positive as that for year over year over year, like Perreault may be able to, but I feel like he might have issues once maybe he's a good college player, but beyond that, I feel like might be a bit of a struggle. But he did move up quite a bit just because I looked at him and I was like, you know what? He's really smart, makes really good plays a lot, and you have to respect that. And I mean, at the beginning of the year, I didn't have him ranked, but now I sort of see it and I'm like, you know what? If he goes where Sasha Pastujov gets drafted, then 100% I'm on board with that. I think that's a great pick. I would much rather have him in the third round than Sasha Pastujov personally. But I see kind of echoes of a similar vibe that I feel watching those two players back to back. Do you like any Sudbury Wolves outside of Quinton Musty? Matthew Mania, I really like. He's moved his way up my board over the course of the year. Long-term project, but I think he's a good one. Alex Ferrand at times I kind of like, but the more I watched him, the more I just kind of went again, like, there's going to be better players that I'd rather have. Trying to think. I mean, those are the draft eligibles that come to mind. Musty and Mania, maybe Ferrand. Asadourian, was he traded? I don't remember. But Alexander Asadourian at times is kind of impressive, but I feel like he'll be like a good OHL player, a decent OHL player, not much more than that. Zellweger or Minchukov? I think I lean Zellweger, but luckily for Anaheim, they have both. Does Molnar still play the friggin' game? I saw some clips, but not sure I'm a fan. Molnar, I mean, he does, but I think Molnar has slowed down quite a bit over the course of the year. I've been meaning to watch him with Erie. I think with Molnar, he's a guy where he has a great motor. He needs to get stronger. And I think he needs to execute simpler plays more often. But when he tries some high-end stuff and it works, it's really impressive. It doesn't happen often, and it doesn't work often, but he's a fun player to watch. I mean, if he's a guy that slips through the draft, like, I don't know if I'd draft him in the first 2, maybe 3 rounds, but as a hardworking guy, especially if I haven't drafted maybe an undersized, high-energy player in the draft yet, like Molnar could fit that bill in the mid-rounds. I haven't seen him in a long time, so that's a good reminder for me to go check him out again. So let me write his name down, because I will forget, because that's what I do best. What is his name? See, I already forgot. Ondrej Molnar. I wrote Moeller. Ondrej Moeller. What are some underrated prospects in the Sharks should target from teams like the Devils, Rangers, Hurricanes, etc. in a package for Timo Meier? I mean, let's see here. What am I doing? What am I looking for? This. Nope, not that. You. Who? So you specified the Devils, Rangers. I mean, I don't know what the Rangers could offer. I mean, Sikora, I feel like the Sharks would want. Brennan Othman probably would be another guy the Sharks would want. Don't know if the Sharks would want Zach Jones. I imagine Will Cooley is not on that list. I imagine since he just played with the Rangers, they're either... I mean, I doubt they're auditioning him for a trade. I feel like people say that a lot, and it isn't actually what's happening. Nils Lundqvist I have here. He can go. Delete. Maybe Mancini or Adam Edstrom maybe could be part of that package for San Jose. Like, they seem to be moving away from what, the thing about those two teams combined in a trade is that I think they value the same types of players a lot, and they're not valued properly. Like, I think they both overvalue the same type of player. Like, it'd be funny how they negotiate this deal, because I feel like they'd look at it and the Rangers would go, yeah, we really don't want to give up Adam Sikora we really would prefer not to. And San Jose's like, if Sikora's not part of the deal, you're not getting him. And it's like, well, okay, like you move on to something else, I guess. But like Sakura probably should be part of that deal. He's not that good. Like he's a good player, but he's still got work to do, and maybe is like a middle six energy guy. But there's a few for the Devils or for the Rangers that I think that the Sharks would want. For the Rangers, that's a tough. Or for the Devils, I mean they've got a lot of good names, right? Like, let's see here. I mean, Shakir Mukhamadullin might be a guy the San Jose Sharks are interested in. I doubt they're gonna trade Seamus Casey already. Peter Hauser could be a neat one, but you don't want that to be the focus of a Sharks trade for Meyer. I mean, Alex Holtz might come to mind, but if I'm the San Jose Sharks, I'm going, well, you probably want Alexander Holtz to be the centerpiece, but like we have no evidence that he's gonna turn into Alexander Holtz that you thought he was gonna be when he gets traded here. Like we have no evidence. So why would I negotiate with that as part of the deal? The Devils just seem to have a lot of guys that are big and maybe underperforming, like Kevin Ball. Maybe like there's not much I think that really moves the needle if I'm San Jose, unless New Jersey wants to pony up a guy they probably don't want to give up. Like unless maybe a Graham Clark is part of the deal. I've liked him when I've seen him very briefly this season. But yeah, I don't know. And the other one, Carolina. For Carolina with Timo Meier, I mean that would be a terrifying trade. But if I'm San Jose and, I mean, what do you want, really? Carolina's got something of everything. Like, maybe there's conversations going on with Dominic Fensori where he's like, I don't think I'm going to sign in Carolina. I'd rather be a free agent. And they go, well, what about San Jose? And he's like, okay, fine. And maybe he's just a throw-in, and maybe that'd be an interesting one. But again, like, I don't think Carolina has a whole lot that San Jose would value a lot. Like, I don't think... like they're not. I don't think they're gonna look. Maybe Jamison Rees could be an interesting San Jose Shark. What else? But like, I don't think the Sharks are interested in like a Justin Robidas or Alexi Hamasalmi or Jackson Blake or Robert Orr or Scott Morrow or whatever. I just don't think that's likely. And they certainly aren't trading. I mean, unless the Carolina Hurricanes can sell high on Alexander Nikishin, then maybe there's something there. And I like Nikishin this season, but I don't think he's like extraordinary out of nowhere. I think he's having just a career year and playing very, very well. But I don't know. I think the Rangers have probably the most players that the Sharks would be interested in, but those are the players the Rangers probably don't want to give up. What do you think of Stankoven this year? He's absolutely sick. Also in the draft, who do you think will overcome their weakness a la Jason Robertson in skating? It's a good question, and it terrifies me because I remember Jason Robertson. I mean, I think Jason Robertson's skating was always kind of the concerns were kind of always overblown. But I don't know. I look at who could overcome their weaknesses. It's probably someone I have ranked pretty low. Well, Robertson has size. He always had a ridiculous shot and great playmaking vision, but just didn't have the boots. So is there a player that has that kind of a vibe this year? Maybe Matthew Wood, something like that, or Charlie Stramel. But those guys aren't producing a tremendous amount. It's a good question. It's making me think. Maybe, I don't know. Quentin Musty, potentially. Maybe something like that. I don't know. But Musty's more physical than Robertson was for sure. Question, Buffalo making the playoffs? Yes, no. Okay. I don't know. I mean, where are the Sabres now? The Sabres are, oh boy, they're 8 points out of a playoff spot. I mean, they still got a lot of hockey left in them. They're I don't know. I mean, honestly, I don't even know who's on the Buffalo Sabres this year. They got Luukkonen in net. Craig Anderson. Let's just go to their hockey reference page for the year. I mean, yeah, Luukkonen and Anderson and Comrie are splitting the net. Boy, I am going. Who's their cohort for the NHL standings? Like, who are they really in competition with, like, to make that last playoff spot? So they are 3 points back of the last playoff spot, and there are 3 teams in competition for that last playoff spot. That sounds tough. I buy the Rangers for a wild card spot for sure. I don't buy the Panthers. I buy the Penguins. Like cracking the Penguins and Capitals could be tough, but maybe. I mean, you know what? I love watching the Sabres though, so let's say yes. Just because I want to believe. I want to believe in the Sabres. This is not gambling advice, but I believe in the Sabres. So let's just say they do it and move on, because I would love to see the Buffalo Sabres in the playoffs. Hello, Port Gas Diaz. I'm doing well. I am tired, always, but I'm good. It's getting to crunch time. It's getting to busy season very quickly. Now that the prospect scheme is over, things are starting to happen, and teams are starting to fans are starting to realize their team is bad, and they're going to need help coping until the draft and living through that experience and hopefully getting better. So I'm happy to be a resource. But I'm doing okay. Just tired, currently cat sitting, and he's old and grumpy a lot, which is a time, but it's good. Trying to think of anything else going on these days. But that's, I get to go on a vacation in about a month, which will be fun. Opinion on Tim Stützle. He sucks. Tim Stützle stinks. He's awful. Should never have been drafted, and his dog is ugly. No, I'm kidding. I don't know. What do you want me to say? You're an Ottawa Senators fan. You love Tim Stützle. I love Tim Stützle. He's fun. He's electrifying. He goes fast. He's skilled. He's good. Is Kirill Marchenko surpassing your expectations? No. He was a really, really good KHL player, and I felt like he and Kuzmenko were probably the guys that I would move heaven and earth to get over to North America. And he's been great. I've only seen little bits of him with Columbus, but I'm not surprised he's doing very, very well because he rocks. Thoughts on Felix Nilsson? Ah, yes. Felix Nilsson of Rögle. I like Felix. He is a rambunctious, feisty little guy. Not the biggest dude in the world, but he's feisty. He gets pucks through traffic really well. Good 200-foot game. I really like Felix Nilsson. Like, in terms of a guy who I've tracked a few games of, who just drives good results, he is probably up there. And I did one of the games at the men's level. You definitely see a lot of weaknesses at that level for him. But he's also young, and it was like the second game he ever played there. And he's not physically developed yet. He's going to take some time to fill out and get stronger and more resilient on the puck. But that's going to be what's pivotal for him in terms of like getting to play his style at higher levels. Like, he's a very intense player. Good skill, good passer, drives really, really solid offensive creation data. Just a lot to like about Felix Nilsson. And if he's, he'll go a lot later than he should, I think, unless the Detroit Red Wings draft him at like 37th overall. And I would not be surprised if they did that. Tyler Peddle had a big game last night, but it'd be time to revisit him. The details need work, but his acceleration is notable. And I think it's not a reach to say top 5 shot in the draft. I mean, I think that might be a bit hot. I don't mind Tyler Peddle as a QMJHL guy this year. I don't mind him. He'll get drafted. I haven't looked at him in detail in a very long time. So yeah, I thought he was okay last night. Top 5 shot in the draft might be a little much. But I'll check him out again, because it has been a while since I've watched Tyler Peddle, and I did kind of not mind what I saw. And he was on the tail end of my ranking list to start the season. I just pulled him off after a while. Any new updates to the goalie list? Well, I've updated the goalie data up to now. I added Samuel Urban, a Slovakian under-18 goaltender, to the list. I watched a bunch of tape of him. On Instat, you can select areas of the ice where you watch shot attempts against a player, or unblocked shot attempts. So I look at Samuel Urban because he's facing 46 shots a night playing for the Slovakian junior team in the second division over there. And so I just wanted to see how he does in that situation, facing that many shots. And I mean, when you have an 896 save percentage, that's not great, but when your goals against average is 4.77, like that's a lot of work. Those are busy nights. So I kind of was curious about that. I kind of liked what I saw. So I put him on my watch list. I moved Bjarnason down quite a bit, and I moved Hrabal and Augustine down. And Fowler moved up a little bit after I watched all 5 of these guys a little bit because I am trying to like just expose myself to a lot more goaltending and see what that's like at this level. Because the only and especially after having the experience of watching a lot of Jesper Wallstedt a couple of years ago and going, okay, this is what this means. Like this is what a great goaltending prospect looks like. It's like, okay, now I know. And with him, it was like very clear to me. And with these guys, it's a little less clear. Like I'd say the only one that really gives me those vibes is Hrabal. But he's had a pretty slow last month or so. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. With goaltending, like the way I see it with goaltending is with Wallstedt, it was like, do I think this player could be a franchise goaltender? And the answer to me is yes. So where in the NHL draft am I drafting a player that could be a franchise player? Probably top 5. Like if I had a Ouija board and I asked it, is Jesper Wallstedt going to be one of the best goaltenders in the NHL? And it said yes, that's probably a top 5 pick. So that's why I ranked him there. But also he had strong data with him. Every international performance, every junior performance, every men's league, he was very, very good and doing stuff in the Swedish Pro League that no goaltender at that age had ever done before. That matters. With all of the top-ranked goaltenders this year, that does not exist. But in terms of the mechanics and being square to the puck like Wallstedt was, monitoring the flow of play like Wallstedt was, the only guy that I really see moving the needle for me that much is Hrabal, even if he doesn't have the sort of save percentage and goals against average that like is sparkling and top tier anymore. I think there's a lot to like there. And if I'm taking a risk on a goaltender that I think might be a number one day, yeah, like a late first round pick seems reasonable. Like if a contending team drafts a goalie that might, like if the Toronto Maple Leafs, for example, go out there and draft a Michael Hrabal, I wouldn't be surprised because, like, 1, they already have some decent prospects that are young in their system. 2, they just don't have much goaltending that, like, has a lot of upside. Like, I like Keith Petruzzelli. I think Joseph Woll is okay, but they don't really have that, like, goalie guy that they're working with to get to the promised land and can bring along slowly. They just don't have that. And maybe that would not surprise me whatsoever, and I think that would be a decent bet. If a team drafts him like 15th overall, it's like, good for you. Like, all the more power to you. If you think you got something there, then good for you. I would not be against the idea, but it is a bit risky. And the rest of them, I just think they're good goalies and, might be worth drafting later on, for sure. Thoughts on Cousins' breakout season? Has it been that good? Again, I don't keep up with the NHL as much as all of you might think. I really don't. I work a full work day and then I watch junior hockey like a lot at night. So I don't get to watch much of the NHL. Oh wow, yeah, he is doing quite well. Good for him. Good for Dylan Cousins. Give me a take on Dragicevic. Hotter the better. Dragicevic is closer to a do not draft for me than a first round pick. Is that okay? Because I really don't know what I think about. I really don't think Dragicevic is going to be an NHL defenseman one day. I don't know. Someone takes him in the first round. God bless you. All the more power to you. Go nuts. Sorry if this has been asked before. If you had the first overall pick this year and were offered the second and third overall picks, would you take it? No. Nope. I mean, no. I love Adam Fantilli. I love Leo Carlson, but Connor Bedard is Connor Bedard is one of those guys where, like, when people ask me to compare him to people, I just don't answer the question. He's Connor Bedard. Like, who does Alex Ovechkin compare to? He's just Alex Ovechkin. Who does Sidney Crosby compare to? He's just Sidney Crosby. He just is. He is who he is. Who's Austin Matthews compared to? He's Austin Matthews. Like, just one of a kind, not perfect, but does things at such an unbelievably high, does a lot of things at such an unbelievably high level that you just have to draft that guy. You have to draft him. Like, it doesn't, like, to me, I don't give a crap if he's a center. I don't care if he's a winger. I don't care. All I care about is that Connor Bedard is on my team. just the shot, the playmaking, the timing, the speed, the skill, the creativity, the audacity, the confidence. He's a bit of a rat. Like, there's just so much that I love about him that even if I wanted to nitpick and be like, yeah, but Fantilli and Carlson might be this and this, it's like, I still look at that and go, yeah, no, I'm taking the guy that might score 50 goals and 50 assists like for a long time. I'm taking that every day. Who do you think will be viewed as a late first but will fall to the early second? Well, that's not falling very much, and be a steal for some team. I mean, yeah, that's not much of a fall. That happens all the time. I mean, if you want to talk about players that I have ranked really high that could slip to the early second, like Jaden Perron could be a massive steal if you pick him in the top 40. I really like Gavin Brindley. I don't really see how he's this undervalued still outside of he just doesn't have points, but I don't know. I love how he plays, and I feel like as a second round pick, he'd be a great option there. I mean, if I think a guy like Mikhail Gulyayev could slip quite a bit in the draft, and if that were the case, then he might, if he's a second round pick, then you're kind of hitting the table a little bit to try to land him, because I really, really like him. And the game I did this week, it was the best game I've seen him play all season long, like by quite a wide margin, and it was in the VHL. Well, I mean, yeah, I shouldn't say that because him at the junior level in Russia is hilarious. But in terms of against pro competition, KHL, VHL, best game I've seen of him all year. The problem with math, this goes back to my favorite class in high school, which was math. The problem with math for me is I'll always do some stupid mistake even though I know how to execute the problem. Yes, that is true. I have a problem with an evaluation, right? Like, I was talking to Sam McGilligan about this the other night. I grew up going to Montessori school, which, if you don't know what that is, it's a very different type of learning for children. I did it until I was 11, grade 6, and it was very sort of multidisciplinary learning. So a lot of tactile stuff, a lot of playing with not toys, but tools to like help learn. A lot of self-directed learning. And the teacher would sort of give you like a 10-minute lesson and then give you a workbook. Like, I would spend hours in a day, well, maybe not multiple hours, but like an hour doing multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction tables just because I wanted to. And I miss doing that in school. And I think it's a travesty that we don't teach more kids that way, because that's what kids need. They don't need a teacher standing in front of them for an hour lecturing them about what numbers are. A teacher can just tell them what a number is and then help them along the way as they do the workbooks. We had classrooms that were 3 grades at once and like all kinds of stuff. So for me, studying was not like it helped me get so far ahead in school that I didn't really have to study until I was like 16. And by that point, it's just too late. I had no study skills, and I still do really bad with evaluation and being put on the spot. I really need to plan things out and form a plan and like have like I can wing things, but only on the backs of sort of my natural ability to wing things, not necessarily like doing things the best possible way. And I think that's an issue that I've still been working through. But yeah, I mean, I totally understand, especially with math. I did the exact same thing in university, right? Like, it's like, man, I really could have got a B+ on that if I just had my head on straight and thought about this instead of this and thought about this and didn't fall for this dumb trick. I don't know. But I understand where that's coming from. But those classes in high school definitely bucked that trend for me because I loved it, and you needed to double and triple check your work to make it make sense. Because otherwise you just wouldn't have the right answer. Like, a lot of those questions in grade 11 functions and relations that I remember or advanced functions were a lot of like, you either get it or it doesn't make sense. Which I love. I love it. It's like you're a detective, which I kind of like. And in now my 30s, like, I wish I did more hard math, engineering level sort of, that kind of work in my university career. But biomechanics and sports science got me here, which is also pretty cool. Do you think the CHL NHL agreement needs to be tweaked? Absolutely. That's not a controversial take at all. I think it would be a good compromise that the team can choose one CHL draft pick to move to their AHL team early every year. I just think there needs to be a release clause for players in the CHL that the NHL pays, right? Like, there needs to be some sort of flat fee that is past, like, a CHL team needs to know what a top player brings in ticket revenue in a year and say, we want that much money plus 10%, and then we'll let him go. Right. And it's like, for an NHL team like that, that seems like it makes sense. You pay a release clause to remove the player from the league early, and you financially just pay them off. Like, I don't know how else you're supposed to do it. Because otherwise, like, you're taking, again, I think the CHL has too much leeway in this, or too much power in this discussion. Like, they're just a junior hockey league, right? Like, why does the CHL get these benefits and like junior hockey in Europe doesn't, right? Like, why do junior hockey teams in Europe? I mean, it depends. I mean, there's a lot of under the table stuff probably that goes on between junior teams in Canada, the US, and colleges and whatever. Like, it's not the cleanest world, I don't think. But I think that agreement definitely does need to be tweaked. It's very, very strange, and I think it's a detriment to the development of CHL players. Alexis Lafreniere should have been in the AHL. Quentin Byfield, under normal circumstances, probably shouldn't have gone back to Sudbury, maybe for a year, but having the flexibility to make that decision matters. And yeah, I mean, I personally would think that some sort of release clause to get them out of the CHL, you might even get the player back, right? Like, if you say we want to bring him to the AHL, and then a month and a half in, you're like, okay, maybe this was a mistake, we'll send him back to junior. You've made the money to allow him to leave, but he's back on your team. So it's not the end of the world. I don't know. I'm just trying to make it make sense. And I agree. I think it needs to change. Do you think Minnesota Duluth is a bad program for good forwards to go to? Sandelin is burying Howard down the lineup. UMD hasn't developed a 50-point forward since Mason Raymond. That's a good point. I mean, I think Minnesota Duluth is a good college program. Howard is a player who is going to need some time, but he is underperforming what I thought he was going to do. I don't know. I don't know enough about college hockey or UMD to really know for sure. But the point about not developing a 50-point NHL forward since Mason Raymond is a very interesting point. It might just be a coincidence, but it's a very interesting thing. Do you understand what Vancouver is doing? Yes, I do. Vancouver is trying to not be bad. Like, they've been like, Jim Rutherford said it, right? Like, a lot of people were surprised that Andrei Kuzmenko got signed to an extension today. I'm not. He loves Vancouver. He was a Vancouver Canucks fan. It's why he signed in Vancouver. He wants to stay. So why would you not want him to stay other than just to trade him for picks? But they don't want to just trade guys for picks, right? When they're talking about trading Bo Horvat, they're saying, we want players. We want players back. We don't want picks. We don't want futures. We want players. They don't want to be bad, right? The Vancouver Canucks have admitted defeat this year, but they're not coming back next year going, we're going to be bad. They're coming back next year being like, this year was just a blip. We needed a new coach. We didn't play hard enough. We're going to reset and we're going to be better. Like, that's what Vancouver is doing. A lot of people might disagree with it, but I'm not in a position to say it's not going to work. I don't think it's going to work, but I don't know it's not going to work. I don't think Rick Tocchet is the solution to all their problems. I mean, they have a lot of problems, and a lot of it comes from where they're spending their money. I would much rather have Andrei Kuzmenko signed for under $6 million, considering how well he's played. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Because also for Vancouver, like, let's say they did want a tank. You trade Bo Horvat. What else do you trade? Like, maybe Andrei Kuzmenko, but he's also still somewhat of an unproven commodity. Like, I wonder what you would even get for him, right? But who else are you going to trade? Like, Luke Shen, maybe someone overpays for Luke Shen a bit. You're not trading JT Miller. That's just not going to happen. Who's going to take on that? And all anyone has been doing all year is just skewering that guy. So his reputation isn't great. Tyler Myers, who is taking that? Oliver Ekman-Larsson, who is lining up to take those contracts, right? Like, the only way I could see those kinds of trades happening is if you don't get anything in return except the cap space. You just go, okay, like, it's like David Clarkson for Nathan Horton, right? Like, no one wants those deals. So you just make whatever move you can to just offload the guys. But I don't know. Vancouver seems to think that their team is not actually that bad, and they're just a couple of pieces away from a really good team or a better team, and maybe they're right. But I think it's a tough road. I don't know. Who do you consider the 5 best defenseman prospects currently drafted? Oh God, I don't know. Can I take a pass on that? Like, I feel like I'm just gonna piss people off. I don't know. And also it depends on what a prospect means. I don't know. There's a lot of I'll think about it, but there's a lot. Everyone is talking about how this first round compares to previous first rounds, but what about the second round and third? Is this a top heavy draft in the early rounds? I think like from the like 10-ish range to like the 40 range is really close, and they're pretty good. Beyond that, there's some interesting projects there. You know, like I like Noel Nord. I like Alex Rykov. You know, I'm very low on Colby Barlow, but I can see why, you know, I have him at 50, and I can see why Barlow would be drafted way before then, but I don't know. He's an interesting player in that range for me, as like a finisher with some physical edge to him. You know, like there's a really curious case of Matthew Soto, who's very, very young. And I think Soto is a heck of a hockey player. You know, he just has a few fatal flaws, I think, that really limit his NHL upside, but I admire how he plays. And he busts his bum. And I really, really respect how Matthew Soto plays hockey. There's a lot of guys like that. Ignat Lutfulin is a Russian guy no one's talking about, but I love the skill. I love the sort of potential of a guy like that. If you leave him in Russia for 4, 5, 6 years, I feel like he's just going to get better and better and better every single year. Thoughts on Robert Yarventy? He's fine. He's a good shooty boy who can skate pretty well. I mean, could he be an NHL player that can shoot on a power play and like chip in at even strength elsewhere? Sure, potentially. Sure, he's still young too. Like he's a very young player for his draft class. Is Luke Evangelista a Brian Rust clone? That's a thought. That's what I labeled him in his draft here in terms of his work rate and multifaceted play. Yeah, I could see that. Like, yeah, sure. I think he might be a little more skilled than Brian Rust, whereas Rust is a little more like physically intense and stronger, but similar effect on the game, I would say. Which Pokemon would make the best hockey forward? Which would make the best defenseman? And which would make the best goalie? Well, Snorlax would be the best goalie, especially because he wouldn't leave the net, and he takes up the whole net. Best defenseman? I feel like Lickitung is a real big, chonky boy. Let's see. Original 151 Pokemans. Can I get a full-sized, blown-up image of this? Nope. What about this? Like, with forwards, you need fast ones, ideally. So, Oh, this isn't... This is dumb. I'm getting sucked into something I shouldn't be getting sucked into here. Sure, I'll just use this, because I know you probably can't read it, but I can, so ha. Okay, so forward... Forward, I might go, like, with a Haunter... or something, like something that can disappear and then reappear completely in a new location. Snorlax is definitely playing in net. Who's really fast? I might put like a Pidgeot at center, you know? Like that kind of vibe. On defense? Oof. Well, NHL teams would definitely take 2 mucks for sure. I think there'd be a lot of mucks on NHL teams. For defense, maybe I would go with Metapod? No, can't go Metapod. Sandslash might be an option for me in my defensive world. Sandslash. Hitmonlee or Hitmonchan. We'll do that. We'll put Hitmonlee and Hitmonchan on defense with Haunter and Haunter on the wings, and down the middle you got a Pidgeot, and in net you've got a Snorlax. How about that? We'll go there. Oh, there was another Pokemon question. Uh-oh, I lost it. Where'd it go? Are we doing Pokemon opinions now? Who's your favorite starter? I'm trying to think of all the games that I've played and the ones that I liked the most Like, I'm not super into Pokemon to the point where, like, I know the stats and I'm looking for perfect Pokemon hatches and, like, I need all the golden ones. My cousin spent hours, I watched him for hours as a grown man looking for, like, all of the golden Pokemon. Hatching and hatching and hatching and hatching and hatching. Oh my God. He literally was riding his bike in circles in the video game, of course, not in real life. Video game players don't ride bikes. Trust me. And it was just brutal watching him do that all the time. No offense, but I don't think he's watching, but apologies. But of all the starters that I remember playing with, I mean, I am tied to Squirtle, because like when I bought Pokemon Blue or Red when I was a kid. Yeah, I got Pokemon Red when I was a kid and picked Squirtle to start the game. Good for me, right? And that was right when that game came out. Oh my God, I feel old. Not Chikorita. I did go with Cyndaquil for my gold playthrough when I first got that game, and I loved playing with Cyndaquil and Typhlosion or whatever. What else? We'll go with those. Is Hanzik more of an offensive version of Shapovalov? Yeah, I would say that. More skilled, and I'd say I don't think he gets to the net as well as Shapovalov did, but Hanzik can sort of I think he has a bit more flair to him for sure. Do you have a favorite hockey book? I'm almost done with Burke's Law, and it's easily one of my favorite books I've read personally. I really like Stat Shot. Stat Shot. Rob Volman wrote it. He works for the LA Kings now. He's a very, very nice man. He's been very good to me over the years. And yeah, I'd say his book, it's a little out of date now. It's very rudimentary, but if you're interested in statistical analysis and cutting through biases, then that's a very good one. I don't really read that many like hockey books though. I'm trying to think of other ones. Ryan Stimson, I think is his name. He has one From Tape to Space. That's a really good one. That's more of like a coach's playbook, but it teaches you a lot of good concepts for hockey that are worth understanding, so that's good. Most surprising thing for you on Bob McKenzie's midseason draft rankings, how low Brindley was, I would say. What makes Crystal better than Benson in your opinion? I think Crystal slows the game down a lot better than Benson does. Benson kind of forces pretty much everything he does, and I'm wondering about how well that happens for him in the NHL. Crystal has more flaws than Benson, for sure, like 100%. But Crystal has like that next level creativity, that next level vision of the offensive zone and threading passes and placing passes for his line mates around the ice. I just think that is sort of just like up a step, you know? And I think if you are patient with Crystal, you let him go out and make mistakes, you give him a few years to sort of learn how, you know, you send him back to the WHL for at least another year, you know, get better on his feet, get stronger, get a lot more intense defensively, you know, learn those sort of lessons of like, you could be a phenomenal player rather than just a great scorer. And I feel like over time he would get there. Benson, you know, the concern with guys like Benson, and after a few years of doing this, there's a few guys that are like this, where they play with this insane motor at the junior level, but then when the things get harder and everyone else gets a lot better, they kind of struggle with pushing and pulling the game. Like, you need to be able to slow the game down sometimes. You need to be able to sort of play with your positioning a little bit more. And you can't just be going 100 miles an hour all the time. And I think with Benson, like, he's getting a little better with that. But also, we'll see how it goes. But I with him, you wonder about how much more you're going to squeeze out of that melon. Yes, someone mentioned Amir Miftakov being drafted off as World Junior. That is true. My favorite pairing at the CHL game was Bonk Dragicevic because it just was instructions on what to do to Dragicevic whenever he tries to play defense. That is true. He had some rough moments last night that I remember. Is Fyodor Svechkov going to bust? I'm not making that judgment now. It's too early. He's been bouncing around Russia for a while. Give it time. You got many more years with him. He's 20, 21 years old. It's fine. But I will say he has been a little underwhelming. But there's a player there, I still think. Where would your top three from last year's draft and this year's draft go in this year's draft? Okay, so last year's top three, if you don't recall, was Wright, Cooley, Lambert. I would put all three of those guys behind Bedard and Fantilli. I think I would put Cooley over Carlson. I think I would then put Carlson, then Wright, and then Lambert. And then Crystal, Benson, Moore. if that makes sense. Have you watched Matthew Mania yet? He's gotten better and better and is one of the most fun players I've seen. Good speed, puck rushing defenseman. Yes. I really like Matthew Mania. Like, really skilled, remarkable shooter. I've liked Matthew Mania since watching him last year. I was really pushing for him. I think I might have mentioned him at the beginning of the year on McKean's as a guy that I think is in the OHL that's kind of underrated. He started a little slow, but he's kind of picked it up, and I really like Matthew Mania. He's a guy where I think he has some big holes in his game. His defensive game is pretty not great. He's not very strong on his feet. He can overhandle the puck and send pucks into no man's land a little too often, but he's got some good speed. He's got really good skill, and he's got a hell of a shot. And I think there's a lot of things you can work with moving forward with him. Thoughts on Ethan Gauthier? I've liked what I've seen, and he's one of Gary's gems. Yeah, Gary's back. I'm not a fan of Ethan Gauthier. I just have not seen it with him. I've tracked 3 games of him. I've watched 2 more, and every single time I just don't see it. There are some moments where he strips the puck off a guy in the offensive zone and puts the puck out in front of the net, and his line mate puts it in. But you're not going to get that many chances to do that in the NHL. I am always very wary when I'm watching games and a guy scores a point off of some schlub third pair QMJHL defender whiffing on a puck in front of the net. Like, I was watching Noah Dower-Nilsson last week, and I was like, how is this guy scoring points so much? I don't understand. And then the opposing team was cycling the puck below the goal line, and the puck just bounced over at a guy's stick. Dower-Nilsson was right there, grabbed it, turned around, put it in the net because the goalie wasn't paying attention and didn't think that was going to happen, which is perfectly understandable. And that was a goal for him at the end of the game. So there's that. It was a little strange. But I'm always wary of that. Any thoughts on 2 late round guys? Those 2 guys I have not heard of, so I will put their names down. And I also don't want to get jebaited by those names because they seem fake. Oh, no, they're not. I feel like I've seen James Petrovsky. Why do I recognize that name? Okay, I have not. I don't know who Dead McMillan is, and he has not come up on my Google search. Thoughts on Grayson Sachin? He was awesome last night. He's gotten better and better in my eyes over the year. He's just outside my first round. I think he needs to improve his skating for sure. But I think he's smart enough and skilled enough to make it work no matter what. He protects the puck really well. There's a lot to like about him. I like Grayson Sachin a lot. Could Klimovich be a guy that could fit in Tocchet's system? I don't even know what Tocchet's system is, so I can't tell you. Also, if Vancouver gets another first rounder, would a Reinbacher or Pellica be perfect considering they're in need of high-end prospects? Depends on where the pick is. Like, if you get like a late, you're not usually, if Vancouver gets another first round pick, it's probably not going to be a team that's not contending. And I doubt Reinbacher is there at the end of the first round, and Pellica might be, and maybe that would be an option for Vancouver. It wouldn't be the worst pick, but I just don't, I get the feeling that they're not interested in landing first round picks. I think they're more interested in just getting guys who can play. Who's the player in this draft that scouts will fall in love with or overrate because they like their grit? To me, Oliver Bonk. I don't know. I've seen him a bunch of times and I just have not seen it. He's an okay shooter. That helps, and that's kind of where his offense comes from, but I just don't see it with him. 2023 eligible forwards who play a violent game but are still pretty good at hockey. Quentin Musty at times can be a little violent, but not like too bad. Charlie Stramel at times can throw his weight around pretty good. Noel Nord, but he's not really like a meanie pants. Kasper Halttunen, but I don't think he's great. I don't think there's much there with Halttunen. So maybe that doesn't answer your question. Jaden Lipinski, he's a pretty physical guy too. He gets all up in your cheese. So he might be up there too. Any 2024 draft eligibles that are under the radar and catching your attention? I really like AJ Spalacy. I don't know. His speed, power forward potential. Doesn't play a ton for Windsor, but is pretty effective. I like Jacob Battaglia in Kingston. I've always liked him. I'm trying to think of other ones that are not super high. Kevin He in Niagara. I think he's with Niagara, right? Or did they trade him? I don't know. Yeah, he's with Niagara. I like him. He's pretty neat. Yeah, on pace for 20 goals, not bad. Who else? I mean, I think Ivan Demidov might be my number one guy for next year. Don't hear much about him. There's a few, there's a few. Who do you think Carolina would want this draft? Carolina is going to draft like Oliver Moore like 27th overall, and people are going to lose their minds. Does Hrikowian's USHL production impress you more because he was playing AAA and prep last year? I feel like major production and growth jumps from weak leagues to a tough league is worth noting. Not really. I mean, I just look at what the player's doing, and Hrikowian I love. I mean, he's just all over the ice all the time. He's a shooter. He's a passer. He's a guy who I haven't watched in a while, but I love him. I think he's a great player. I'd be very happy if he was a guy drafted in the late rounds. Like just looking at his data now, like his offensive threat is over 30, which is really high. I have to do another game of him. It's been a while, so grain of salt. But lots of slot pass attempts, not a ton of completions, but he's trying. And lots of dangerous shot attempts on his part. He has 11.5 high danger shot attempts across the couple of games that I've done per 60 minutes. And that's 71% of his shot attempts. Like that's a lot. That's really good. And his transition data is also really, really good. Like on paper, I think he's one of the best undrafted guys re-entering the draft this year. But he's fun. Is what we're seeing out of Andrei Svechnikov his ceiling, or does anyone think he has another gear? I mean, he's been pretty consistent since he was drafted, but you never know. I mean, I always think about it like I wouldn't tell Andrei Svechnikov that I think he's never going to get much better than this, right? Like the goal of a player always should be to get better. Like I hope Andrei Svechnikov gets better, but he's been relatively consistent for a few years, and if this is what he is, then that's fine. But also like who knows? He's still, he's not old. But yeah, I don't know. I also haven't seen a ton of Svechnikov this year, but I'm always a little hesitant to be like, nah, this player's tapped out, right? Like they're done. But we'll see. Did Stramel's World Junior performance make you think he's weighed down by a terrible Wisconsin team? Yes, I think that's a factor. Yes. Is Benson skating good enough to be an elite player at the next level? Do you think he'll be able to significantly improve his skating going forward? I mean, he's a pretty good skater as it is in terms of generating speed and continuously maintaining speed and utilizing crossovers well, and he does a lot of things right. I think if anything, Benson needs to work on just being more efficient and knowing when to slow things down a little bit. I think that those are going to be the things that I think will really delineate if he can be a really high-end offensive player in the NHL, or if he's going to be a really, really good energy guy who you play on your power play and your penalty kill, and he's just a really good analytics guy who might have, 65 points in a season, and fans are like, well, why did we draft this guy 5th overall? But like, if you really look, you could see a good player there overall, like just a good hockey player and a guy coaches love to play. A winner, as they say. Is Lenny Haminaho this year's Nicholas Nordgren in terms of being a productive draft year Liga player that won't grow much? Potentially. I mean, he's bigger than Nordgren, but he kind of, I don't know. I remember watching Nicholas Nordgren, and I do think that injuries got in the way for Nordgren. I loved him, but yeah, I think injuries got in the way, and he was also a lesson for me, for sure, growing in this business. Watching a lot of his draft tape back a few years later, I was like, okay, yeah, I can kind of see why people were pessimistic. Kogadelic thoughts. I like Kogadelic. He's fun. I wouldn't draft him, but I think he could be a really good OHL scorer, and like who knows where he goes from there. But he's shifty, he's skilled, he sort of gets low to the ground and can fight through traffic really well. It's pretty fun. Obviously, he likely would have become much more if not for COVID, but what do you think Marco Rossi will become at his peak in the NHL? I'm never doubting Marco Rossi ever. I think a middle six guy, middle six center or winger, seems perfectly attainable for Rossi. I admire that guy for as long as he'll play hockey. I have his jersey already. I love him. Just an admirable hockey player that's been through a lot and has the kind of personality that you just always want more of on your team. So I hope he finds his way into an NHL career that's productive and a good fit for him. Do you think there will be another Cutter Gauthier-like player in this draft class? Well, maybe. I mean, drafted 5th overall kind of thing. I mean, to me, that might be like drafting Nate Danielson 5th overall or something, maybe like that. I don't know, someone like that. Maybe Quentin Musty, but maybe not. I don't know. How do you choose what games to track of a player? Isn't there a bias if you know the score of the game or stats ahead of time? I mean, it's kind of an honor system thing. I really don't care about production and the score in the game. The only things I really try to do is balance home and away and watch and track the data from games against good talent. Like when I remember when Marco Rossi was draft eligible, people said, oh, he scores a lot against bad teams. But then I went to my data and I said, well, I track a lot of data against really, really good teams, and he is excellent against those teams. Even if he doesn't score in every game, he's excellent. So to me, I always try to, I mean, I don't really it's not really about bias. Like, I don't really care what the score is, right? Like, the funny thing about hockey is that goals are noisy. Sometimes grade A scoring chances don't go in, and sometimes grade F scoring chances do go in. So it's like, the score is only part of the story, right? Like, I was watching a game. Who was I tracking? I think it was Oscar Fisker Molgaard. He was on the ice and getting absolutely pummeled in the SHL, but at the end of the game, HV71 was winning like 3-0. He wasn't on the ice for any goals for, but he certainly wasn't on the ice for any good offensive chances in his offensive end. So I don't really care regardless what the score is, so I don't think there's much of a bias there. And when it comes to stats, like, again, it's like a kid could have 5 grade A scoring chances and none of them go in, and a kid could have 2 grade A scoring chances and 3 grade F scoring chances, and one of the Fs and one of the A's goes in and he's got 2 goals. And there's a lot more to just games to me and evaluating young talent than just what the score is and what how many points they got. Like, to me, it doesn't matter. Like, I don't even track points that players score in a game. I reluctantly track goals for and goals against, right? Like, I don't really, to me, it's not that big of a deal. So I don't even think there's any bias for me. The only thing I do that I really try to do to keep things equal-ish is try to do home and away equally and focus on the better teams as long as I can, right? Like, try to do games once a month as well. So I space them out just so I can see cross-sectionally how the player's playing over the course of the season. And just see as many and track as many games as I can. And when I also fill in the gaps on a lot of these guys. Like, I'll be watching either selections of parts of their game in isolation or full games between the tracked games that I do. There's a lot more to it than just sitting down, downloading a game and inputting the data for me when it comes to like watching these guys. Caitlin Kramer is going to UMD, so hopefully they can develop women's hockey. That's very good because she rocks. Connor Bedard in Montreal would be insanely fun, right? Man, Connor Bedard in Mexico City would be insanely fun. He'd be fun anywhere. But yes, in Montreal, for Montreal fans, yes, he would be very fun. For Ottawa fans and Toronto fans and Tampa fans and Florida fans, yeah, no, not as much fun. What do you think Stankoven will be in the NHL? Where did he go in a 2021 redraft? I mean, I should have had him higher, in my opinion. I wanted to have him higher, but I felt spooky doing it. I mean, I could see him being a top 6 scoring winger. Just he's fast, he's skilled, he gives a crap defensively. There's a lot to like about Logan Stankoven. I'm a huge fan. Brad Lambert or Andrew Crystal? I go Crystal, but only just. I think I said the opposite earlier in the show, but now that I see this in front of me, I think I go Crystal. But man, if I could blend those two players together, if I could give Crystal Lambert's physical traits, like his speed and his skill level, and if I could give Crystal Lambert's ability to or if I could give Lambert Crystal's ability to see the ice, slow the game down, make passes through traffic, and drive more dangerous offense, my goodness, I would like that hockey player a ton. But they are not the same person. They are two different people. I don't remember. What was your opinion of Grudinin? Is he close to the top Russian defender in this draft class? Well, he was last year. I loved Grudinin. He was top 15 on my board. I adored him, maybe top 20. He was sick, and he still is sick. I think Vladimir Grudinin rocks, and everything good that ever could happen to a defenseman should happen to him. Last one. If you started a franchise right now and you had to pick between Rossi or Shane Wright, who would it be? Probably Shane Wright, but that hurts me. I don't like that question. It hurts my feelings. Probably Shane Wright, but I love Marco Rossi a ton. especially right now. Like today, I'm probably not going Marco Rossi. Do you think the Ducks will have made the right choice between their two left-handed defense prospects, Zellweger and Mintyukov? Oh, we'll have to make a choice. No. It wasn't too long ago the Ducks had too many good defensemen, and they might have that problem again in the future, and Zellweger and Mintyukov are going to be there. I don't think there's any problem with those two guys each playing 18 minutes a night. I don't think that's a problem at all. Do you value Barlow's PK ability? Seems like his ability to play in all situations gives him an extremely high floor to at least play third line, power play and penalty kill in the NHL. No, because I watch Barlow at 5-on-5 and I see him and I'm like, okay, he's a physical player, but he's not particularly quick. I see a guy where I'm going, maybe you play him on your penalty kill, maybe. But my idea of penalty killers are like how Toronto runs their penalty kill with guys like Michael Bunting and Mitch Marner out there, like just buzzsaw pests who just stay on you all the time. And I just don't see the same kind of mobility required to do that out of Barlow. Again, like with Colby Barlow, I have him ranked where I have him ranked. I'm not a huge fan of his game. His track data is bad. And when I look at Barlow, I go, he's going to get drafted like top 10, top 15. I'm going to be happy because I'll be able to land a player that I think is better 20 picks later. And I'm okay with that. And it's like, you know what? If you like, to me, I'm not drafting a third line penalty killer in the top 10. Like if that's what your goal, like, and I also don't see a ton, like maybe on the power play he would just feed him the puck and he shoots it in the net. That's fine, right? I don't know. It really depends on what you've already got in your system, what you see out of Barlow. Because when I watch him, to me, I put so much of a focus on 5-on-5 hockey, especially when it comes to like top picks, because 5-on-5 is how the game is played, right? Like you shouldn't. In my opinion, you shouldn't really value that much how a player plays when you have penalties drawn against you or when you take penalties, because it's rarer. It's very rare, and like the rules of the game almost change. And on a power play, the game just gets easier. So like you should have an elite player at 5-on-5 and put him out on the power play and have him also be a help there. Like that's just the idea. And to me, a guy like Zach Benson, like, yeah, I'd play Zach Benson on a penalty kill. Sure. And on a power play. I think he's good enough to do both. Same thing goes for like an Adam Fantilli. So yeah, I don't know. I when it comes to special teams, like there's a reason I don't track it. There's a reason I focus a lot on even strength and 5-on-5, because that's where the proof of the pudding is, right? Like that's where it is. How has Musty looked to you? It's been a while since I've seen him, but he's gotten better and better over the course of the year. Really good under pressure. Sometimes skeets himself into pressure, but really, really good player in terms of making plays through pressure. You know, pretty good shooter as well. Funnels pucks to the middle of the net a lot. Grinds play really well. I like Quentin Musty quite a bit. Projection for Pinelli. What's the ceiling? Middle six offensive guy. Maybe not a center, but he's been really good along the boards. He's a sneaky dude on his edges. He can, skating backwards and forwards. He can sneak into space, and he did it last night. He quarterbacked that rush up the ice, drew defenses inside, had a drop pass, or was it a drop pass? No, he backhanded it, and then followed it up below the goal line, snuck out in front, and scored a goal. Like I think as a middle six offensive winger, Pinelli could be a good one. He's a good defensive player as well. Chases guys. He's an excellent forechecker in the offensive zone. Speedy, intense, a lot of things that I like to see out of a player for sure. Thoughts on Mishak heading to Youngstown? I'm thrilled. I can't wait. Youngstown's going to have a good team for the down stretch of this season. They've added Andon Serbone. He's been good with them. Martin Mishak's coming to town. Jacob Fowler's been playing better over the course of the year. I feel like they're adding more guys, and they're amassing more talent for sure. And Mishak is going to be a lot of fun at the junior level for sure. It'll be his first extended junior hockey in 2 seasons, I think. So let's see how it goes. Connor Bedard is clearly a generational talent, but where would he be selected in a draft of the last 20 first overall picks in the NHL draft based off of their draft seasons, not NHL careers? Oh my God. 20? Really? what was 20 years ago even? 2003? Deegan McMillan. Okay. Deegan, not Deaden. Okay. I'll check these guys out. Just for you. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Last 20 years. Oh my God. Well, who would I take above Connor Bedard? Probably Connor McDavid and Sidney Crosby. Probably. That's probably it. In my view. Maybe Austin Matthews, but that is very, very, very close, and I don't like it. Probably after Crosby and McDavid. Thoughts on Niko Mijadovic? I have not seen enough of him. I thought he played okay last night. I thought he had some nice moments. Again, I don't know if I see like a huge upside guy there, but I think he could be a good junior player. He already is a pretty good junior player, but I mean, like, once the older guys on Seattle leave, I think he'll take over and play pretty well. Decent shooter, got a bit of skill, but I worry about the pace of his game and the foot speed he's got. I just feels a little bit limited. From Bob McKenzie's latest rankings about Yager, scouts are not saying he's Bergeron 2.0, but they're saying he approaches the game with the same mindset as the NHL's premier two-way center. I don't agree with that. I don't see it, right? Like, when I see a two-way center, I look for someone who can quarterback transitions up the ice, chip in defensively, and shut down rushes, a guy who shuts down defensive cycles, and none of those things are things that I've seen Brayden Yager do particularly well. Maybe, I'm not saying he can't learn how to get there, but I just don't see that out of Yager. To me, that sounds like they're trying to make him seem like coming into the season. I don't remember anyone talking about Brayden Yager that way. They were talking about his shot and his offensive ability, and now it's like, well, he's not scoring a ton, so like maybe he's just a two-way guy and you know, plays good at both ends. And to me, I just don't see that. Like, he's not a possession monster. He's not a great passer. He's not a great skilled offensive transition control guy. I don't know. He's having a tough go. Having a tough go. Yes. Do you doubt Chaz Lucius now more for turning pro early, being met in the AHL and now sent back to junior? Seems like he isn't a great skater and needs time and space to be effective. Yeah, I mean, Lucius is a guy who I always was lower on than a lot of people. I watched him and I was thinking, like, he was part of that NTDP team with guys like Pastajov, where I'm going, yeah, the pace of his game is not great. It's just not where it should be for a guy that scores this many goals. Again, add him to the list of guys that are underperforming. You say it with me, the commandment. If they score a lot of goals and don't do much else, they might be problematic. I mean, I would have maybe taken Lucius-ish around where he got drafted, but he had problems. And problems where I'm going, okay, I think he's going to struggle. I didn't think he'd struggle this much, and I don't think it was going that poorly for him in college, but I don't know. Again, it's not over for Lucius. He's very young still. Like, keep that in mind. He's still very, very young. But I also, with Lucius, have just felt that, yeah, like, it's a good case study of, like, why, when I look at hockey players, like, why pace matters at the junior level. Like, I want to see guys that force opponents to do things, not allow opponents the charity to counter them. Like, I look at guys who are always activating, right? Like, guys who are active in play, guys who can control the puck, guys who can, you know, do a lot of really good stuff at high pace. You know, it's why I like Jaden Perron a lot. It's why I like Gavin Brindley so much, because these guys don't screw around. They distribute the puck really well. They skate hard. They play at both ends of the ice. They drive possession. They drive the pace of the game in the right direction, and they make opponents adapt to how they want to play. With Lucius, it was more, if I get the puck around the net, I can put it in. And to me, it's like, great. Like, but what about getting the puck to the offensive zone? It's just, you know, especially for a first round pick. And it's why I have guys like Dvorsky and Wood and Yager and Strammel lower, because I see those guys and I'm just like, I don't see the same kind of thing out of them. Personally. And Grav is in here. Hello, Grav. Welcome. Local celebrity, I suppose. Well, not local to me, like local internet celebrity. Talking about Maddox Fleming. Same thing. I remember watching Maddox Fleming and going, I don't think this is going to work down the road. He's just not, the pace isn't there. The skill level isn't good enough. Like he's not dictating, right? He's not forcing other players to react to what he's doing. And that's problematic for me, especially for a first round pick. Where were we here? Thoughts on Nikita Grabionkin? He, and I'm on the record on this, so you can go look at my Toronto Maple Leafs recap video, but he was the only re-entry MHL player last year that I liked, but he's been better than I thought he was going to be. I mean, granted, he's getting a lot of ice time with Amour. They're giving him a big role, but he's a big, skilled guy. I like Grabionkin a lot. He's taken a step. I think he's quicker. He's a bit more skilled than he was last year. But last year, I really liked what I saw out of Grabionkin. I just hadn't seen enough to rank him. But I'm on record going, you know what? If you're going to draft a guy out of Russia that is a little older and you want something a little more physically developed, like, he is a legitimate option. And if his name came up, I'd go, yeah, okay, sure. Like, let's take a chance on him. It was, the 5th round or something? Makes sense to me. And yeah, he's a good player. He's taken a big step, and he's been better than I thought he would be this quickly. What are your thoughts on the Big Four goaltending prospects' progress this year? Wallstedt, Askarov, Kosa, Levi. Well, Levi's tough because he's just playing in the NCAA still and just rocking and in an easier conference. Wallstedt, I think, has been great. Askarov, we'll see. I think he's always going to be a wild man, but he's fun. Kosa, it's hard to tell because he's in the East Coast League mostly, and it's just hard to tell. But I mean, I'm still big on Wallstedt, 100%. Did I hear correctly that you have a bachelor in kinesiology? I do. I have it. It's somewhere in this room, I think. I don't know. I think it's back there behind the screen. But yes, I do. I do have one. I did it. I barely got there, but I did it. Who are your favorite goalies for the draft class? Michael Hrabal and Trey Augustine, and then maybe a bit of a drop to Jacob Fowler, but then a drop to Carson Bjarnason, and then I have I like Adam Gajan, but I don't know about like a first round pick where I've seen him in a couple of spots. I like Sam Urban, a goaltender in Slovakia. Are there any other goalies that I've seen and liked this year? I kind of like Alessio Brunn in Switzerland. He's kind of neat, but I don't have enough of a sample on him to like know for sure. But yeah, Gajan is in there. Who else? Yeah, we'll go with that. We'll call that. We'll go there. Like, I'm not huge on Zavragin or Volokin, the guys in Mamonte Ugri. I'm not huge on those guys. Noah Volley, I'm not huge on. Yeah. Scott Ratzlaff has had a very easy go of it, supposedly, according to the data. So yeah, I'd say Hrabal, Augustine, Fowler, Bjarnason, Urban, and maybe Gajan. If so, I don't remember. Oh, okay. So did I hear correctly that you had a Bachelor of Kinesiology? Yes, I do. If so, I don't remember hearing a lot of comments on players' skating mechanics, stance extension, recovery, arm swing. Is that because skating analysis is a very niche skill, or you just don't see it has an issue since a guy will be able to improve either way? It is something that I note, but my thoughts always are on what the player actually is achieving, right? How is a bit secondary unless it's extreme, right? I think you can get away in the NHL with poor skating mechanics. I think it's possible, but you have to have other things to make up for it, right? Like, the way I evaluate all of this is like everybody's on a spectrum in the individual talents, right? Like, and it's why I have a category that's just move and not skating, right? Or skill. Because like you can get away with a lot of skill and maybe not the best skating under certain circumstances. But perfect skaters aren't always great players, right? So obviously skating mechanics, like it like when I look at an Andrew Crystal, like or like a Daniel Boot, like I look at Daniel Boot and I go, okay, there are skating mechanics issues there that you can work on for sure, especially with a guy that big. And that's what to me could lead to like a lot of potential because of the skill level he's got, because of the quality of his shot, because of how he tries to funnel pucks into the middle of the ice for his teammates. Like, because of all of those things and how they can combine, if his skating mechanics improve, especially moving in a straight line to generate speed, then there could be something there. So it's almost like a case by case basis of like, okay, how does skating mechanics, whether they're good or bad, impact the performance of the player? Like I don't go over it specifically because I know about them, and I think I know more than I think about how mechanics should work. But I look at skating mechanics and go, it's a touchy subject for me because I was never a super high level hockey player. And my focus, I don't want to focus too much on it because I go, okay, but like, what's the output of this? Like, for like setting aside the extension of the person's leg, how are they playing? Like, that's always the focus first. And then it's like, well, if it's really, really good, is the skating mechanics a potential limitation in the future? If it's really bad, are the skating mechanics something that's holding them back? Are the mechanics really, really good and the skill level just isn't there yet, and maybe you train that? Like, it's a part of the equation, but for me, I always start with just results and what they're doing and how they're doing it, and then from that you sort of derive like, okay, but like you dig into more detail this way. Bunting doesn't play penalty kill. Camp, Kerfoot, Yarncroke, and Marner with a hint of Engvall. Yeah, I mean, but like, still, all of those players can skate, right? Like, Camp, Kerfoot, Yarncroke, and Marner are very, very good skaters. Again, I don't watch a ton of the NHL. I figured Mike Bunting would be a penalty killer. But a player like that is kind of what I imagine would be a penalty kill player for me. Why do you think Bordelot and Eklund struggle at 5-on-5 in the AHL? I think together half their goals are on the power play, going off what The Athletic has written about them. Because it's an adjustment. It's hard. The AHL is hard. Like, going from college to the AHL or the SHL to the AHL, it's a jump. Like, these guys probably need some time. I'd be curious to see how Eklund would be. I mean, I've liked Eklund every time I've seen him, which isn't that often, but I've liked him. The San Jose Sharks seem to be going in a different direction from players like Bordelot and Eklund, so we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I don't know. I think they've gotten better as the season's gone on as well. But I can see why those guys would play better when there's a power play situation, because again, when you're on the power play, you have an advantage. You have an extra man on the ice. So you get more freedom and the other team is sitting back more. So with guys like Eklund who have speed and skill, yeah, he's going to look a lot better. And Bordelot, he's got the shot, he's got skill, and he's got this offensive ability, so that's going to come out more on the power play. So getting stronger and just getting more experienced and learning their limits at the AHL level, I think will help, and I think it'll also just get better over time. Like, again, this is a long-term thing. It's the last thing you want to do is rush your guys to the NHL, right? That's it. Timothy Liljegren thoughts. I love him. I've got a Timothy Liljegren jersey on the way at some point. What is his ceiling? I mean, top four defenseman, like top four 200-foot guy, maybe a power play guy. He can rifle it from the point. I would not mind seeing him more often on the power play. Thoughts on Marat Kuznetsov? Awesome. I love him. I've always loved Marat Kuznetsov. He's gotten better and better every year. He's on the right track. I love him. I think he's great. Since the Mike Van Ryan rule was implemented, the only player to leave the NCAA and go to the CHL who became a good NHL player was Duncan Keith. Food for thought when looking at guys like Boucher and Lucius. Yeah, and again, both of those guys were guys I had questions about at the end before they were drafted, and for similar reasons. And it's for those reasons that I've looked at my rankings and gone, you know what? I am going to be more confident in saying these players have a longer way to go, and drafting them really high is riskier than I think people think. So I've moved guys that are like Dalibor Dvorsky kind of rings that similar bell to me. Matthew Wood since the beginning of the year has rung that bell for me. There's a few of them. Not that many, but they exist. Who are the right-hand defensemen that are good on defense and should be picked in the late first or further? Oh boy. Is Tom Willander right-handed? Because he would be one. I think he is. Yes, Tom Willander certainly is one of them. Jakub Dvorak, is he right-handed? Yeah, Tom Willander. Dvorak is not, but I think Dvorak plays the right side. Who else? Carter Sutherland, I think, is a righty. I think Carter Sutherland's a righty. Yes, Carter Sutherland is another one that I would keep an eye on. Who else? Albert Vickman, is he a righty? I don't think Vickman is a righty. I watched him today, I should remember. No, he's not. Okay, I'm right. So I'd say Willander and Southern are probably the better ones. Dvorak plays the right side. I like him there for that. I don't think David Reinbacher is going to be available, and I think he's a righty. Come on. Yeah, he's a righty, but I don't think he'll be available there. I think Simashev is a righty, or does he just play the right side? Dmitry Simashev. He is a lefty. Okay, so not him. How about that? Who are the comparables of the Leafs' big four forwards? What? They're already in the NHL, man. Like, I don't know. Marner, Tavares, Nylander, and Matthews. They're those guys. They're those guys. Where would you take Cole Knubel? Probably late round, 6th, 7th round. Why is Michkov so low? Because he's very reliant on being a finisher. I think with Michkov, his ability to map out the ice, connect passes together, string plays together for his line mates is pretty limited. His forward speed is pretty limited, and he gets closed in on really quickly and skates himself into unwinnable situations quite a bit. He scores some funny goals. He knows how to bury them. He knows how to put pucks in the net for sure. But again, he's another one of these guys where, there's a lot of data that is somewhat questionable. And I have to trust that. At 5-on-5, he's a player that I think is much less effective than on the power play. And that's okay. He's not a bad player. Again, I have him at 9. It's not like I don't like him, but I just think that something like a top 5 pick for him is a little crazy. Would you be willing to go into why you drop price in your rankings and talk a bit about how you account for a player's age when building your list? Yeah, of course. So with Caden Price, I loved him last year. Like last year with Kelowna, I saw the skill, I saw the confidence, I saw the flair, and I wanted more. At the Hlinka, you saw a bit of it, and he was pretty good. But with Kelowna this year, he has been not good. I've been giving him the benefit of the doubt. He is very young, for sure, but like Gleb Trikozov was so interesting last year to me because he was so young and good. And Matthew Soto is very interesting to me because he's so young and he's been very good with some caveats. With Caden Price, like you see the skill for sure once in a while, but he doesn't do anything with it. He's sending passes off the boards to nobody. He's not moving his feet defensively or offensively. He's very sort of low pace. He's sitting back, letting play come to him and adapting, and sometimes it works, but a lot of times it doesn't. It's not great. I don't know. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens with him. He is young, and I've seen some really high level stuff out of him, but like it's gotten to the point where I'm like, I don't want to take the risk in the first round on him. If he falls to like the 3rd round, then yeah, I might do it. If he's the 4th guy I draft, I'm pretty thrilled. And that might be possible. But from what I've seen of Caden Price this year, like I'm primed to like him. I came into this season being like, this guy could be the best defenseman in this year's NHL draft. And now I'm sitting here going like, I don't know where I would draft him. Like I really have been struggling with him a lot. Could Jaden Perron go top 10? No, he's not going top 10 at all. How much value should metrics like JFresh and Evolving Hockey's hold? And how much do they actually tell you in your opinion? It is a good start, but it is imperative to see how those numbers are generated, right? Like what I love is Michael McCurdy's spider diagrams where it shows how a player's metrics change with and without players that they play with a lot. Those I think are very important and valuable. And it can point you in the right direction a lot of the time. The other ones I find are very prone, like they're team, a lot of them are team metrics, and the player benefits, the player is a good part of that system, but it's, not necessarily what it is exactly that they are doing, right? Like with McCurdy's graphs, you can sort of say, okay, this individual, when playing with this other individual, this is what happens. And when you collectively put them all together and you see a guy who's pulling literally everybody they play together with in the right direction, then you know you might be onto something, or you might have a more likely chance of finding an overall good hockey player. Like Arturi Lehkonen was an example of one of those guys, and I love Arturi Lehkonen. And those are the types of players that I'm always looking for. It's just, no matter who you put them with, they're going to make them better. A guy like Gavin Brindley is like that to me. He might not be the best finisher, but you put him with a finisher, he's going to make that finisher look way better, in my opinion. So with that, I mean, I don't know. I think those player cards get thrown around like a lot, and there's a lot of like vitriol thrown around about it, and like a lot of, I don't know if taunting is the word, but takes and like, this player is good because of this, and this player is bad because of this. And it's like, well, usually it's a little more complicated than that. And I think in an actual hockey situation, I think it's a little bit more limited. But I mean, they're fun, I guess. They're fun toys, you know, it's fun to watch, fun to look at. Line goes up, right? Thoughts on arguably the greatest NCAA player of all time, Matthew Nyes. He's good. He's a good guy. He could be a good middle six power forward. I like him. I mean, I didn't have him ranked, but he also had like an illness that I was not aware of and was injured for a bunch of the year and just did not have a great season, and he's come along pretty well. I think the hype train's a little out of control, but he's a good player. I think he could be a good one. If you're Al Murray, oh gosh, and your first pick is in the 90s for Tampa, who do you bang the table for? Who do you bang the table for that has star potential that could be there in the late third? Will Whitelaw? Timur Mukanov and Will Whitelaw, probably. Why are other scouting outlets lower on Crystal even with his amazing production? People are concerned about his defensive game and his skating, which I honestly agree with. I'm less concerned with it because I think you just deal with it and figure it out. Like, I'm concerned about Connor Bedard's defensive game, but I don't care. He's still Connor Bedard. Crystal just doesn't have the speed that Bedard has and the confidence, I don't think, but I think Bedard, you know, I think Crystal, the skating is a concern. I think he just doesn't have the speed and the separation speed that he kind of needs in order to get away from guys as much as he could and create space for himself. But he's a masterful passer and he's a masterful skilled player who I just think the world of. So I personally am not as concerned. But I totally understand why NHL scouts are concerned. Like, one of the scouts I talked to was like, he might even be a second round pick. And if that happens, like, I wouldn't be surprised. Like, he's 16th on NHL Central Scouting List, which implies maybe a late first. If that's what happens, I'm not surprised. I would be excited to draft him in that range, and he's probably the best bet you're going to find, and you just paste him to a skating coach for 3 years. But I'm not, I like him a lot. Gunther upside, no, top 6 scoring winger. Sure, he scores points. Cool. Up and down guy. Smart puck mover. What is Jakob Dobish and Lane Hutson's upside? I mean, Hudson, I think, could be a top 4 offensive guy, top power play guy. Dobish, I'm not nearly familiar with. I don't know. I mean, I know Habs fans were like over the moon about him and like losing their minds about him. I don't even know how he's been doing. He's with Ohio State. He's having another good year. Maybe not as good, but he's having another good year. Ryan Johnson, Jackson Lacombe, and Dominic Fensori or Henry Thrun. Who's the best and would be worth signing if they run out the clock to UFA? Probably Ryan Johnson, but Dom Fensori is not far behind. I love Fensori. I really like Johnson. Lacombe's good too, so is Thrun, but I'd aim at Johnson Fensori. Oh, we got a hot take. Bedard isn't NHL ready, in my opinion. He's also too good for the WHL. He's also going to be years away from the AHL. Should Bedard be granted exceptional status in the AHL? No, Bedard's going to go to the NHL. He's going to be fine. He's unbelievable. Like, he just went to the World Juniors and against like the best junior players in the world who are going to be aging along with him. He's unbelievable. Like, I don't think he's going to come into the NHL and score 140 points. I think that's ridiculous. But I think he could come in and score 60 points, 65 points, 30 goals. You put him on a power play day one, right? If you're the Anaheim Ducks and you put him on the wing with Trevor Zegras, he's going to score 30 goals, right? Like, it's going to happen. And I mean, I'm on the Bedard to the Ducks ship. I'm sorry if anyone disagrees with me, but I'm right. I know I'm right. It would be incredible. And I don't, like, again, first of all, he's not going to get any sort of exceptional status to play in the AHL. He's playing in the NHL. He's a marketing tool, right? Like, whether he likes it or not. And I think if you told Connor Bedard he's not going to be in the NHL next year, he'd go, well, screw you, I'm not playing for you. Like, I think he's going to go, I'm playing in the NHL. Like, I've been busting my bum. This is going to happen. And honestly, I'd be like, all right, prove yourself wrong, and you're playing in the NHL. Like, go nuts. But I think you put that guy in your power play to start the season. Maybe start him out on the wing. But he is going to be a heck of a hockey player, I think. Best overager in the draft. I've got a few in the same tier. Knuble, Duke, Frikoyan, and Isagai. I really like Knuble, so I put him ahead. But I also really, really, really like Dylan Frikoyan. I really admire how he plays, and I see him and Knuble very similarly. But I might have Frikoyan at the higher at the end of the year. I like Austin Roast as well in Everett. Eric Polkamp with Cedar Rapids as well. Nikolai Kvorov. I like Thomas Simonson, who's a French kid playing in the French Pro League. I like him too, so he's on the watch list. But I still am a believer in Kenta Isagai. I think he's only going to get better as the years go on with Ohio State. Tyler Duke is having a good season for a freshman. Knuble and Frikoyan are my other two. Best overrated. Oh, you meant with the Leafs' big four NHL prospects. Oh, gosh. I'd say Fantilli, maybe Matthews. Nylander, I don't know, Will Smith, who else? You said Marner, Crystal, I'd say, and what was the other one? Tavares, Leo Carlson. Which player outside the first round will be an NHLer and have an impact? Outside the first round and have an impact? Literally, probably Idar Suniev. Big physical guy. I'm sure he's going to make an impact. He's fun to watch. But in reality, I mean, seriously, maybe Martin Misiak. He's fun and plays hard. More likely to put it together in the A and the NHL. Cam Allen or Hunter Brustevitz. I'd say Cam Allen. I'd lean Cam Allen there. Dahlin's potential, top pair offensive defenseman. He's, again, like, Dahlin is already like a Norris candidate potential defenseman. Like, that's great. That's about as high as it gets. Are NHL affiliated prospects at Harvard overrated a bit? Yes. Yes, they are. Like, look at the Harvard guys that have come out of there in the last few years. Like, Jimmy Vesey was on the front page of TSN for weeks. Like, the ECAC is Ivy League schools, and it's just not the best quality out there. When should a player be allowed to be called a bust realistically? Probably once they're waiver eligible. Like, if a player hits waivers and they were like a top pick. I mean, there are some exceptions. Like, Oliver Shillington was on waivers and nobody Oliver Shillington was on waivers and nobody claimed him. Oh my God. But I don't know, like 5 years after being drafted, I'd say, is like when you kind of know what you've got most of the time. Thoughts on NHL Central scouting lists? They're fine. I don't know. They have their biases. Thoughts on Alexander Nikishin? I don't buy the production that he's had, but he has taken a big step. He could be a decent minutes eater in the NHL, I think. Bedard to the Sharks, how dare you? Nope, I'm sorry, you're wrong. He's going to the Ducks. I know you would hate it, but it's going to happen. Joe Miller's upside, 11 goals in 19 NCAA games. I just don't really see it with Joe Miller. I think he's a guy that might be a good AHL player. I don't know. I like him. I like Joe Miller. I hope he's an NHL player. He's very young, but we'll see. 11 goals and 5 assists. Put it on the board. Put it on the list. Keep track of that. Scores more than anything. Where's Carson Rakoff off your list? What is he as a player? Rakoff is one of the last players I have ranked. He's in my third round. He's pretty quick. He's deceptively fast. He's got a bit of skill, but he's a physical player as well, but I don't see a huge upside there. Like maybe a bottom six energy guy with a lot of pace and intensity. Surprise player from the top prospects game. I wasn't expecting Sachin to be that good. I thought maybe who was really impressive that really I wasn't expecting. I mean, Rakoff played better than I thought he would. Suvorov, Vadim Moroz, or Stanislav Yarovoy. Who of these guys is most likely to take the Sharangovich jump and make the NHL sooner than everyone thinks? Suvorov. 100% Suvorov, I think. But he won't get drafted because he's 5'8". Did you think Zadina was overrated in his draft year? Late birthday, who wasn't great in his 17-year-old season in the Czech League and was overly reliant on his shot in the weak Q in his 18-year-old season. Yeah, I mean, I think so. I had him ranked really high, but this was before I did a lot of manual tracking work, and I probably would have had him a little bit lower than I had him based on what I've seen in retrospect, looking at the data on him that I can find that I didn't do, but other people did. I think he might have been rated a little bit lower had I done the same kind of work. But I don't know. I don't know. Something's weird there. Like, I feel like he should be further along. Even that like, he was a fast, skilled guy with a remarkable shot. There should be more there, but there just hasn't been. So I'm not sure exactly how that works, but we'll see. Opinion on Brady Stonehouse. Leads a good 67s team in goals. He's fine. I mean, he's a physical guy. I like Stonehouse okay. I don't know. He's fine. I'm not huge on Brady Stonehouse, but he could be a good physical power guy in the OHL and maybe earn himself an NHL contract after that. Or he's going to get drafted this year. Who knows? Okay, this has to be my last question because this last one that just came in, I can't answer. Most underrated player in the CHL and NCAA. I can't. I don't know. I can't give that to you. I'm sorry. I don't have that. I know a lot, but I don't know that much. What should the salary cap be so more exciting movement trades and teams that win can keep their players? Okay, I say this every time I get asked about the salary cap. It doesn't matter what the salary cap is. General managers will find a way to waste money and light money on fire until they get to the salary cap because it's enticing. They're like, I can spend $3 million more. How can I fit some more guys under the, how can I get that? Like, I need to spend to the cap because like that's where I have the best players. I need it. So like, if you upgraded the cap to $100 million overnight, certain teams would get to $100 million really quickly, and other teams it might take more time, but just through either bad contract decisions, trades they make for good players or whatever, they would get to $100 million too, and we would end up in a log jam as well, right? Like, the salary cap started with quite a bit of flexibility, but it did not take very long. Like, the problem with NHL teams being hamstrung by salary caps is not the salary cap's fault. It is the fault of the people who sign the contracts under the salary cap. Like, that, you can't blame a rule just because it's there when the people who are meant to have flexibility around that rule just throw that out the window and go, yeah, but I want my guy. Like, they walk in July 1st and go, yeah, I know David Backes isn't worth $6 million, but we're giving him $6 million. Sorry, like, welcome him to town. Or David Clarkson, like, it doesn't, like, to me, it doesn't matter what the salary cap is. You have to have one because you can't trust NHL general managers. Like, maybe you have a luxury tax system, but the NHL is not a healthy league. Like, it is not healthy to the point where you can just allow teams to not spend and allow other teams to just spend whatever they want and just sustain the bad teams. Like, nobody in Major League Baseball likes that the Pittsburgh Pirates and Oakland Athletics have payrolls that are like a fifth of some of the highest payrolls in the league. To me, that's not a healthy league either. The teams might be healthier, but the league's not very healthy to me, in my opinion. So with the NHL, I like how unpredictable the NHL is. I like the constraints of a hard salary cap. Like, figure your own crap out, right? Like, manage your own team. I also think that, like, should there be more exciting movement? Yeah, but, like, part of that is also the fault of the general managers for, like, not swapping people around. Like, if you think you need to make a swap on your team, like, why don't you have a young player that can step in on your fourth or third line, move a third or fourth line forward up, and make a 1-for-1 swap or something and get a defenseman? NHL teams are, like, petrified by the fear of failure, and for good reason, because, like, in the NHL, if you fail, you're fired, like, immediately. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think with the salary cap, it does not matter. No matter, like, it's the same thing as the draft lottery. If you do anything with the draft lottery, it's going to make some people really happy, and it's going to make a lot of other people really upset, right? Like, people keep whining all the time about the draft lottery, and they keep changing the rules, and more people are whining. Now it's like they're tanking too much, and now they're not tanking enough, and then blah, 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 blah. No matter what you do, it's not going to be perfect. And when I look at the salary cap, it's not a perfect system, but also the other thing to keep in mind too, and I said this, I think, in last week's stream, the salary cap is only one part of the equation with how money works in the NHL, right? Like, hockey-related revenue needs to be split 50-50. the salary cap is derived from that, and it's half of the money goes to the players. So salaries and everything like cannot add up to more than half. But because general managers and owners keep writing giant checks to these players that really shouldn't have these giant checks, it puts the balance out of whack, and they have to claw more and more money back in escrow. So what do you think happens if you just raise the salary cap to allow people more flexibility? They spend more and more and more and more, and because the NHL can't sell itself and the owners are hopeless in a lot of places, they end up needing to make more money, and they just to make that balance, but they don't really need to make much more money to make that balance equalize. They can just claw more back from the players, and then the players get mad, and then you go into a lockout scenario, and it just becomes this big old mess. Like, to me, it's like democracy. Like, a lot of other systems have been tried. All of them are bad. Democracy is also bad, but it's better than the rest of them, and people are happier that way, and it's like good enough. We'll manage for now, because the alternatives aren't great. But also, yeah, I think there's just a cultural problem in the NHL with just spend. Oh my God, where did all my money go? Like, you know, sometimes you got to listen to the people who are like, maybe you shouldn't sign that contract, bud. Like, I don't know if that's a good idea. Like, let someone else make that mistake. I don't know. Like, having cap space now is a huge benefit. It is a huge benefit. Big time benefit. And there aren't that many teams that are in that position, but they exist. Okay. I thought Molendyk has looked much better as of late, including at the top prospects game. Yes, he is outperforming his production. I really like Tanner Molendyk. I think he's just outside my first round. Or is he in there now? He is now. He's at 26. I love Tanner Molendyk. I think if you want to bet on a guy who skates, he's one of the better ones. Quick thoughts on the Canucks. They're a bit of a tire fire right now, but, you know, are they going to be a phoenix that rises through the flames? Are they going to be the orca whale crashing through the ice on their logo? Or are they going to be bad again? I don't know. I mean, they've made bad decisions. And they're paying for it. And we'll see how it goes. I don't know. But anyway, this has gone on for almost, oh my God, it's been 2.5 hours. Thank you very much for joining me. I got to run. I am losing steam real fast. So all the best. Thank you very much for joining me. Cup final prediction. We'll go with your least favorite teams playing against each other in the Stanley Cup final. We'll go. Let's throw. I don't know. My brain is fried. You can ask me again next week and we'll go over it. But thank you very much for joining me. This was a lot of fun. Again, thank you to the sponsors of the show, Fanatics up top, the Blue Line Hockey IQ program, and McKean's Hockey. Thank you very much. And we'll see you next week. Yeah, click that like button, smash the like button, smash the crap out of it until your mouse melts under your hand. Just make sure it's actually toggled on at the end. And yeah, thank you very much, and we'll see you around. All the best.